the Senate Minority Leader. I'm going to give him another 5 minutes.
Watch it.
Wow, see? He's on time.
That's a first.
Mr. Leader, how you doing, Mr. Leader? You were right on time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're probably going to have some more legislators coming in. They're all traveling. But as we're inclined to do, we try to start on time. So it's now 1:01. And so we'll bring this, we'll commence the hearing at this time. It's opening statements. Yeah, okay. We'll start with opening statements from myself and from the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Derrick Simmons. My name is Robert Johnson. I'm the state representative from District 94 and the Minority Leader in the House of Representatives. District 94 is Adams, Franklin, and Jefferson counties. Good afternoon. As we come together for this third hearing on TANF, it is with a sense of deep frustration. Over the last 2 years, we've heard from experts, we've listened to families, and we've introduced legislation designed to fix the shortcomings of this vital program. Legislation that we've introduced has been recommended, not the legislation, but the ideas of the legislation have come with some consultation from the executive director of DHS. They're not punitive issues. They're just ways for us to get a better idea of how to serve the people who this money was designed to serve. We also have introduced legislation to raise the amount of money allowed to families with temporary assistance. Not any objection from Mr. Anderson or DHS, but the leadership in the House and the Senate have chose not to allow our bills to come out. So we'll continue to do the work. We'll continue to grind it out. The inaction by the leadership has left families struggling to access the help they need. The TANF program is created to provide temporary financial assistance to our most vulnerable families. But when these funds go unused or misallocated, those families suffer. Today we need answers. And I appreciate Mr. Anderson being here to help offer those answers, and some program directors are here to talk about the value and the importance and the success of some of the programs, so we'll have that too. And why the legislation we propose has not happened, we'll talk about that. And what will it take to move these two houses beyond the hearing into real action. We're not just here to talk about temporary assistance to needy families. We're here to push for the changes that are long overdue. I urge my colleagues on both sides in this Capitol, not only on both sides of the Capitol, but both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, to put Mississippi's families first and take this opportunity to finally move the needle. But we'll keep pushing. Thank you all for being here. Now I yield to the Senator from Washington County.
My name is Senator Derrick Simmons, and I represent Senate District 12 in the Mississippi Delta. Senate District 12 covers Bolivar, Washington, and Coahoma counties. Just like House Leader Robert Johnson has given an opening statement, I do have a brief opening statement. Good afternoon, colleagues, witnesses, and members of the public. This marks our third hearing on the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program over the past 2 years. And yet, despite all the information, all the data, all the testimony we've gathered, we find ourselves asking the same questions and seeking the same answers. Several pieces of legislation have been introduced by both caucuses, the House Legislative Caucus, Democratic Legislative Caucus, as well as the Senate Democratic Legislative Caucus, to address the glaring issues in our TANF system. Unfortunately, despite the urgency of this matter, Republican leadership has failed to move the needle in any meaningful way. We are here because families in Mississippi are struggling, and this program is failing to meet its intended purpose. Today, we will once again examine how TANF funds are being allocated and whether they are reaching the families they need, that need it most. We will also ask why so many families are still being left out of receiving these benefits, and what can be done to improve access and oversight. This is not about politics. It's about doing what's right. Families across this state depend on TANF, and we cannot afford to delay reform any longer. I urge my colleagues to use today's hearing as an opportunity to prioritize the needs of our most vulnerable citizens in Mississippi and finally take action to what we as Democrats consider to be a broken system. Thank you. I do. We first will hear from the Policy Director of the Southern Poverty Law Center and Southern Poverty Law Center Action Fund, former representative and former chair of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, Representative Sonia Williams-Barnes. Will you please come forward? You want to see her? No. Okay. You want to see her? No, see her, son.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to share my expertise with you today. My name is Sonia Williams-Barnes, and I'm the Mississippi Policy Director with the Southern Poverty Law Center. For more than 50 years, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been a catalyst for social change in the South. Our policy, litigation, and state organizing teams work closely with partner organizations on the ground and impacted communities to advance policies that improve the lives of people in the Deep South across our 5 focus states, one being Mississippi. I also speak on behalf of a coalition of partner organizations who have committed immense time, resources, and effort toward eradicating poverty by advocating for comprehensive TANF reform. Those organizations are as follows: ACLU Mississippi, Children's Defense Fund, Southern Regional, Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, One Voice Mississippi, Mississippi Center for Justice, Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative, Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative, Springboard to Opportunities, and the National Association of Social Workers Mississippi chapter. This testimony will cover background on Mississippi's Temporary Assistance for Needing Families, TANF program, the implications of an unresponsive TANF program, and opportunities for reform. I would like to begin my testimony by sharing a story about the human impact of Mississippi's failure to reform its TANF program. Imagine, if you will, a 32-year-old mother living in Jackson with her 2 young children. One goes to daycare, and the other is in the 1st grade. She works as much as she can, balancing parenthood and an hourly wage job at a grocery store where she makes less than $20,000 a year. She would like to pick up a second job, but she can't leave her children at home by themselves overnight. She can hardly afford childcare, and she budgets $904 a month for a single-parent family of 3 in the Jackson metro area. Suddenly, without warning, her boss cuts half of her shifts from the schedule, and now she's struggling to make ends meet, even more than she was before as a minimum wage worker. Bills began piling up: utilities, childcare, gas, rent, diapers, the list goes on. Just to keep afloat, she applies for TANF benefits. With little fanfare, she is denied and lays her head down each night, hoping for a saving grace to keep her family afloat. Importantly, this story is not just hypothetical, but instead, it is the reality for families with children across Mississippi who depend on TANF to meet their basic needs. I wanted to start this testimony with the above story because it speaks to the harm and the inability to access TANF benefits and the benefits that it has on the average Mississippian who needs this critical lifeline assistance. and why we must work urgently to fix this broken system. Mississippi has failed to use TANF for its original purpose. Created in 1996 to replace the aid to families with dependent children, the TANF program was in this country's primary way of providing cash assistance to families with children who experience poverty. Through monthly cash benefits, eligible families receive cash that go towards purchasing their most basic needs, often things like food, gas, housing, and hygiene items. For many families, this assistance is a lifeline during a difficult time. A growing body of research finds that regular cash payments to families experiencing poverty helps to insulate them from further housing instability, mental health issues, and long-term health problems, underscoring just how important cash aid is. In 1996, the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act converted TANF funding to a block grant, giving states the flexibility to decide how to spend these funds. As a result, states like Mississippi that do not prioritize cash assistance to families that need it the most have diverted TANF funds towards programs that are technically allowable but outside the intent of the program. Indeed, as we all know, Mississippi has chosen to simply hoard TANF dollars in large reserves. Research suggests that as of 2022, the state has over $146 million in unallocated funds that are supposed to be reaching families experiencing poverty. Importantly, Mississippi has this money stockpiled to misspend because it spends so little on cash assistance, creating an unobligated reserve with no deadline to spend TANF dollars. According to the Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families data, nationally, only 23% of TANF funds went towards cash assistance benefits in 2022. Mississippi's expenditure on cash assistance is even more abyssal. In 2022, Mississippi spent $59 million in federal and state funds under the TANF program, but only 7% reached families as direct cash assistance. The need for TANF assistance is on the rise in Mississippi. Economically, Mississippi families are struggling to make ends meet as the cost of living is on the rise while wages remain stagnant. Out of 50 states, Mississippi ranks 9th highest in cost of living as of 2024. The same study found that it can cost almost $38,000 annually for Mississippi citizens to be able to afford essentials such as housing, grocery, transportation, and health care. Mississippi's minimum wage, as determined by federal law, is still $7.25 an hour. One of 5 states who have not adopted a state minimum wage in 2024. The high cost of living and stagnant wages has especially impacted TANF families as the TANF system has not caught up with the program and benefits are not indexed to inflation. To qualify for TANF, the gross monthly income limit for a family of 3 is still $860 or $10,320 a year. Such a low limit when compared to the numbers of families who make more than this amount, yet still need assistance to afford their basic needs. The maximum cash benefit that a single parent family of 3 can receive is only $260 a month, the second lowest benefit in the country. Some families receiving TANF do not even get the maximum amount of their benefit because of their household sizes qualify for an exact benefit amount for each family depends on any additional source of income, such as Social Security. In Mississippi, $260 each month does not go very far, especially for TANF families with young children. Further, according to the National Diaper Bank Network, the average monthly cost of diapers alone range between $80 to $100 a month, and that was in 2020. And that monthly cost has risen even more. Most child care facilities require that parents provide diapers for their children, and being able to purchase diapers that they otherwise could not afford without TANF assistance allows parents to go to work. In addition to the rising costs of living in Mississippi, another damning number is on the rise, the number of children in the state experiencing poverty. In fact, in 2022, Mississippi experienced the highest rate of child poverty in the country. There were over 175,000 children living in families experiencing poverty during that time. Further, only 1,576 TANF applications were approved between January and December of 2022, an average of 131 a month. The result was only 8.5% of TANF applications being approved. Given the rising cost of living and the increase in children experiencing poverty in our state, the time is now for us to reprioritize TANF aid to Mississippi's most vulnerable families. There are numerous barriers that stand in the way of Mississippians accessing TANF benefits. Put simply, Mississippi families who need TANF are not able to access them. Indeed, according to an analysis conducted by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Mississippi has one of the lowest TANF to poverty ratios in the nation. The TANF to poverty ratio states that only 4 out of every 100 families living in poverty received TANF cash assistance between 2019 and 2020 in this state. But why is this so? Because in addition to a lack of accountability and oversight of the program, there are also 4 major barriers to access: burdensome work requirements, racist drug testing requirements, paternalistic family cap restrictions, and limit on educational use. Work requirements. The federal TANF work requirement applies to states rather than individual recipients. States can decide what work requirements for individual recipients look like. As such, Mississippi can decide who must participate in work activities, what activities they must engage in, and how many hours are required. With this, Mississippi has chosen to focus on connecting TANF parents to work as quickly as possible, resulting in them often being funneled into the same low-paying jobs that led them to financial crisis in the first place. Furthermore, in Mississippi, education is not considered as an acceptable work activity, whereas it is permissible under federal law, creating another barrier for families. Like the history of low cash benefit levels, work requirements rely on false, racist, and sexist narratives around people who apply for assistance, and that families need to be compelled to return to work. This is unfounded thinking. In fact, most TANF recipients work before and after receiving cash assistance. Let me repeat, families are not vacationing with their cash benefits, which are, as a reminder, $260 a month at most for a family of 3. They are working. Drug testing requirements. Drug testing requires impact on families of color, especially Black people who are more likely to experience poverty and financial instability. Though not required by federal law, Mississippi screened 464 TANF applicants for drug use in 2017 and only recorded 6 positive tests. The state during testing requirement for parents seeking TANF assistance creates another needless administrative barrier to access cash assistance and costs the state unnecessary money. Family cap restrictions. Mississippi is one of several states that places a family cap restriction on the program, denying additional cash benefits for families who have more children after their initial TANF eligibility is determined. Cash benefits do not incentivize families to have extra children to receive extra money, nor are TANF families extraordinarily large. These stereotypes ignore the fact that in Mississippi, most TANF families have under 2 children in the household. The family cap further deprives families with children in expanding households of necessary income assistance. Limits on educational use. Lastly, Mississippi can help TANF parents by supporting those who want to attend education and training programs. While not all TANF parents want to pursue education and training, helping parents access new possibilities, careers, and opportunities to participate in the economy will reduce the likelihood that TANF parents will need assistance again in the future. Increased income for the household generates better outcomes for both parents and children. While federal law requires state to engage TANF, parents in work, Mississippi can decide that work activities parents must meet. Traditionally, the state has restricted participation in post-secondary education as well as developmental education programs that can increase the earnings potential of parents. Of note, in Mississippi, less than 15% of TANF parents have received more than a high school education in 2022. It is time Mississippi broaden the opportunities for parents who participate in 2- and 4-year educational programs. Our coalition's recommendations. Despite these policies, we have created an unresponsive TANF program. Hope is not lost because we can change course. The time is now for us to rebuild a more responsive TANF program that connects families experiencing poverty to cash assistance, work, and education opportunities. Our coalition makes the following recommendations to reform Mississippi's TANF program. 1, remove the family cap. Removing the family cap will support parents by giving them the autonomy to decide what is best for their families, including when to have another child. 2, raise benefit levels and index to inflation. Raising cash benefit levels will allow families to continue to be able to spend their TANF cash assistance on basic needs such as food, shelter, and hygiene items during a time while financial assistance matters the most. End mandatory drug testing. During testing is a waste of valuable economic resources when the focus should be on helping parents access the benefits and programs needed to become self-sufficient. Add pursuing education and training as an allowable work activity for recipients across the board. Helping parents access new possibilities, careers, and opportunities to participate in the economy will reduce the likelihood that TANF parents will need assistance again in the future. And increase access to daycare assistance for low-income families. This ensures that more children receive quality early education and enabling parents to pursue stable employment opportunities. Again, leaders and caucus, we thank you for this opportunity to present to you today.
We actually just stay for about 5 minutes, and we'll take some questions.
Okay.
If that's okay.
That's fine.
Does anyone have any questions? Any legislator have any questions for former Chair Lady Barnes on this issue? Gentleman from Lounge. Gentleman from Lounge, and then gentleman from the floor.
If he doesn't come to the mic, they won't be able to hear him.
Thank you, Leader Johnson. Mrs. Barnes, I came in on the tail end. What percentage of the funds were received from TANF, people on TANF?
Cash assistance, is
Yeah.
that what you're referring to?
I think it was like 7%. I don't know what percentage you gave, but I want to make sure as I put in my notes.
Let me find it, but what I'll do is give you my,
Yes,
I'll give you
ma'am.
my whole
Okay.
report. I don't want to misquote, I think it was 7%. 7%. It is 7%.
Gentleman from the floor, you have a question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm David George, District 24, State Senator, 30 years plus. I just want to find out, why would Mississippi want to tamper with federal dollars anyway and not let them go where they're supposed to go? We should have to have a meeting for you to spend our tax dollars in the right way. According to what I've read down and heard, these dollars are designated for people in need, Mississippians. Then somebody tamper it, use it otherwise without going to jail. That's wrong. It's wrong as two left shoes. And it ought to be something done about it. We're the poorest state in the nation by choice. Because we misuse money that goes to the rock bottom poor. That is wrong. And whoever done it should be punished for it. Thank you. May God bless.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to take two more questions. I saw the gentleman from Hines and the gentleman from Washington. And since the Democratic leader is here, I'll take three.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This body that I'm a part of sometimes seems to lack a godly trait that we all ought to carry with us, and that is having sympathy and having compassion for those that's less fortunate than us in this state. I just wonder, where in the world is the compassion among us who come down here every day during the session to try to improve Mississippi for the poor as well as for the wealthy? And I just wonder, where is the compassion? My goodness, these people are citizens of Mississippi, and they deserve to live a quality life. My question, of course, to Ms. Barnes is, besides the advocacy role that you all are playing, is there any other commitment that you all are undertaking, such as legal course? And I know you're doing a great job advocacy. And how can you continue to exert some positive reaction to this body, overall body?
Thank you, gentlemen. So first, we ask that you all introduce legislation to support our legislative recommendations. And we will strongly support you all in pushing it out. But we are depending and leaning on our leaders here in our state to make sure that needy families get the money that's needed.
Thank you. Gentleman from Washington, and then gentleman from Hall, and then we'll go to our next speaker.
Thank you, Leader Johnson. Ms. Barnes, you made some recommendations a few minutes ago, and in those recommendations, could you briefly state them again? And has there been any consideration by the organization which you've been working with, what would be considered an ample amount of funds for a family to need based upon the cost of living in today's market, not back in 1984?
Yes, it is. We are asking for an additional $250 to be added to 260.
260 plus 250.
Correct. That is our ask. And that would put us closer in line with other states in this region.
Thank you. Gentleman from Hall.
Thank you, Leader Johnson. First of all, I'd like to commend Leader Johnson and Leader Simmons for pulling together this hearing, and also for our former chairwoman to lead this discussion. What troubles me the most, and this is just through some crude math, is that the TANF program has been systemically underfunded to begin with. So not only should we be advocating just to get back to average levels, with this $93 million theft, with just some crude math tells us we can put an additional 9,000 families on TANF. So while we're advocating, we're pushing, and we're trying to make sure that we right some of these wrongs, let's move back to this idea of not just equality, but equity, because of this theft that's been going on for far too long. And since TANF has been moved under the purview of our governor, it's problematic, because that means that it takes some of the impetus from us in this chamber from handling those families that are dearest and closest to us in our communities. So while we move forward, Leader Johnson, Leader Simmons, let's look at an increase, an admirable increase, and not just getting back to our basic limits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will make note, and Senator Simmons, it's okay, that we everything that she's recommended, pursuant to the last hearings, we've introduced legislation to do that, including increasing the monthly amount. None of those bills made it out of committee. Representative Summers, myself, Representative Faulkner, Senator Simmons, Senator Blount, we all introduced legislation. So we'll continue to do that. And all we can do is continue to implore the leadership in the House and the Senate to at least give these pieces of legislation a fair chance in the committee and on the floor. So we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership.
Next we'll have Mr. Nick Gwynn, Interim Senior Director and Advisor, Income Security Policy for the Center for Budget and Public Policy. Is that by Zoom? Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to talk with you today about the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF program, and the Interim Senior Director for Income Security Policy at the Center for Budget Policy Priorities, a nonpartisan research and policy institute that advances federal and state policies to help build a nation where everyone has the resources they need to thrive and share the nation's prosperity. I know the severe struggles in Mississippi's TANF program are well known to all of you at today's hearing, including criminal investigations into tens of millions of dollars of misspent funds. But beyond this fraud is a related but much larger problem. For every dollar TANF spends, Mississippi spends only 7 cents on basic income assistance for the state's poorest families. This is the metric that just came up in Ms. Barnes' testimony. That's really startling. To ground us in this conversation today, I will first discuss the benefit of cash for low-income families. From there, I will highlight how Mississippi is currently spending its TANF funds. Then I will end by outlining possible improvements the state can make, given actions by other states to improve their TANF programs. Income assistance can be an important tool to help families solve their financial challenges and build strong foundations for their future. Research and experience show that when cash is available to families who need it, kids have improved outcomes across several measures of health, educational attainment, and overall well-being. A number of studies find that income assistance helps children grow up healthier, perform better academically, go further in school, and earn more later in life. A Columbia University study found that for every $1,000 provided to families and children, society can be up to $5,000 in benefits, particularly from children's increased future earnings and better health. Separately, research compiled by Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago suggests that providing economic and concrete supports to families makes homes safer and more stable for kids, which, among other positive outcomes, helps families avoid or reduce involvement in the child welfare system. Providing cash to families gives them the autonomy to make decisions on how best to address their families' needs. It helps them pay their rent, utilities, and food on the table, purchase other necessities, diapers, personal hygiene, and cleaning products. It also can be vital to families facing crisis situations, such as domestic violence or job loss. In 2022, which is the most recent data we have at the federal level, Mississippi spent $59 million in federal and state TANF funds, with only 7% of these funds going towards basic cash assistance. This places the state 40th among the states in Washington, D.C. when looking at what percent of TANF funds in each state was spent on basic assistance. This partly explains why in 2020, only about 1 in 25 families experiencing poverty in Mississippi received TANF cash assistance, down from almost 4 in 10 families in poverty receiving such aid at the time TANF was implemented in 1996. This is the TANF to poverty ratio that Ms. Barnes also raised in her testimony. Mississippi spends much greater portions of its TANF funds for other purposes, including 19% for child welfare services, 41% for work and education activities, and 25% on a group called Other Services, which covers a wide range of spending. While spending in these areas is allowable with current TANF rules, given the early evidence I cited on the benefits of cash for low-income families, states should strongly consider what TANF is the most appropriate source of funding for all these purposes, especially when some of this funding ends up going to families who are not experiencing poverty. For example, Mississippi has provided TANF-funded college scholarships to families with incomes up to 350% of the poverty level. The state should also consider its amount of unspent federal TANF funds, which in 2022 was $146 million, amounting to nearly 170% of its annual federal block grant. As a state with the highest level of poverty in the nation, Mississippi should carefully but expeditiously allocate these funds to help struggling families. It's also worth remembering that these funds cannot be used to repay any penalties that may be imposed based checks. In terms of what other states are doing and how it might provide a roadmap for Mississippi as a starting point, again, which is also alluded to in Ms. Barnes' testimony, would be to increase benefit levels. While Mississippi did increase its TANF monthly benefit a few years ago, it still has the second lowest level in the nation, reaching only 13% of the poverty level for a family of 3. One option to consider is an automatic adjustment in the benefit for inflation. 15 states now have periodic adjustments or COLAs in their state law or administrative manuals. These states adjust the TANF benefits in one of 3 ways. They tie it directly or indirectly to your Social Security cost of living adjustment. They tie it to a state cost of living index, or they tie it to a percentage of the federal poverty line. Another issue that warrants attention is removing full family sanctions. Federal law requires states to take away some of the family's income assistance when the family does not meet strict work or other requirements through a process known as a sanction. Many work requirements require families to fill out complicated and burdensome paperwork, or they don't account for what happens when an employer cuts someone's hours or when a person without sick leave falls ill or needs to care for a child or loved one. However, states can choose when they impose such sanctions and how much family assistance is reduced. Full family sanctions take away an entire family's TANF benefit, including the child or children's portion. Research indicates that full family sanctions have long-term detrimental impacts on families and have played a role in steep decline in TANF caseloads since the program's creation. Research also shows that work-related sanctions are often applied inappropriately to families with high barriers to employment and disproportionately harm Black families and other people of color. In 2021, policymakers in Maine and several other states such as Vermont, Maryland, the District of Columbia, in repealing this harmful and punitive provision. These actions all follow a similar approach of identifying a portion of the TANF benefit for children and protecting that portion from termination due to sanction. Under this approach, only the portion of the benefit designated for the adult and the family is subject to a reduction. Another issue in need of consideration, which also was raised by Ms. Barnes, is the repeal of family cap. Mississippi is one of just 6 states that still has a family cap, which denies additional cash assistance for families who have children after initial TANF eligibility is determined. These policies cause families with children to struggle to meet their basic needs by depriving them of necessary income assistance and plunge them deeper into poverty. Further, family caps are based on racist, sexist stereotypes that should not drive social policy. Mississippi should follow the recent example of Tennessee, which repealed its family cap. Additionally, there are a lot of issues that seem to relate to access to benefits in Mississippi. It's been reported that Mississippi in the past has had extremely low approval rates for TANF applications, ranging from 1.5% in 2016 to 7.9% in 2022. A broader assessment is needed to determine why so few applications are approved. And that process, that oversight, should really include input from those who have gone through the application process themselves. One step in the wrong direction in terms of accessibility is drug testing of those perks and requirements. It's important to note that research shows that most TANF recipients do not reach drugs. Testing requirements are very costly to administer, and mandatory suspicionless testing has been challenged and found unconstitutional in courts in Michigan and Florida. So in conclusion, I would say that something everyone knows, which is children, families, and rural coasts need help now. Deprivation in early years in particular has significant long-term consequences for adult health and employment outcomes. Mississippi has the financial resources and flexibility within the TANF program to substantially improve the life chances of children whose families do not have enough resources to put food on the table, pay rent, utilities, and buy other necessities. Making these policy choices now will help build a strong foundation for the health and well-being of Mississippi's next generation of parents, leaders, and future outcomes. Thank you again for inviting me to speak with you today.
Thank you. Now we're actually open it up for any questions that any members may have. Okay. Thank you, Mr. King, for your testimony. And now we'll actually go to our next presenter, Dr. Jason Coker, with Together for Hope. Jason.
To the elected officials and public servants who are hosting this event, thank you for allowing me to speak on the moral rationale for ensuring that temporary assistance for needy families is expedited to those who need it most. I'm Jason Coker. I'm the president of Together for Hope, a nonprofit that fights persistent rural poverty in America. And I'm also a preacher. So I'm here as a religious and moral voice, which is kind of crazy to think that Mississippi needs to have a religious leader to beg for poor people. I mean, it's so I might be a little preachy because I just preached Sunday and I'm kind of amped up for it.
Gotta go.
I understand my calling, my job as a calling, with the exact same way that I understood my job as a pastor for 20 years was a calling before I moved back to Mississippi. I fight poverty as an ordained Baptist minister because it's clear from Scripture that we have a moral imperative to do all that we can so that God's will may be done on earth, even as it is in heaven. In the letter to James, a letter from James, we hear the Bible say that pure and undefiled religion before God is this: to care for the widow and orphan in their distress. In the Gospel of Matthew, we hear Jesus himself say, "You who are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels, for I was hungry, and you gave me no food.
Yeah.
I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not care for you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, You did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Now, these are just two examples of the scriptures that compel me for the most vulnerable in our society to care for them. These and the largest swath of scripture in the Bible convince me that taking care of the most vulnerable isn't just good for the society. It's not just good for Mississippi. It's a mandate from God Almighty. And when we neglect the least of these, we neglect our call by God. We neglect God entirely. And I'm not saying this to force my Christian values on everyone in the state of Mississippi. I'm sharing my values because so many other people of faith, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and others who share these religious values and moral callings from their own respective religions. There's a collective religious and moral voice that's calling our whole state to care for our most vulnerable. And TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, is one of the most profound ways that our state can do just that. If pure and undefiled religion before God is to care for the widow and orphan in their distress, it seems like Mississippi, a state saturated in religion and church, should be bursting at the seams with the most robust social safety net of any state in the nation.
Amen.
Because we are home to the most grinding poverty in the nation. But we know that that's not the case. It's an abomination to God and to humanity that we have such deep poverty in the state of Mississippi, and we do so little to alleviate it. In fact, we create this kind of poverty by the policies that we create in this very building and by the policies that we hang out to dry in this very building. TANF, used as it is designed, represents the best of what we believe about caring for the most vulnerable. Structured well and with generosity for the people it's designed to serve, could transform people's lives. TANF done well and TANF done right can let families in Mississippi know that Mississippi cares and that Mississippi is here for them, not dead set against them. A strong and transparent TANF program creates a strong Mississippi. Churches and community organizations work every day to make Mississippi better, but our work alone can't get us to where we need to be. The government has a vital role to play to make sure families receive the assistance they need through TANF with the support from their churches and community-based organizations. Everyone in America knows by now that our state leaders and other high-level individuals abused TANF. This high-profile abuse uncovered mostly who was guilty about abusing government programs. And while this was happening, over 95% of the people who applied for the program were denied. In other words, while abuse at the top was happening, the people who were supposed to be receiving these funds suffered. The people for whom TANF was designed are still suffering, and they still need the program. There's great leadership in TANF now, I think. Help empower that leadership to bring the full weight of the federal and state governments to help families who struggle to survive in our state with the power of a fully functional, robust, and transparent TANF program. Our history shows that for centuries, Mississippi and many of our elected officials have blamed the poor for their own situation in life. They blame the poor for being poor. And for centuries, our state has divided the poor between those who deserve help and those who don't deserve help. And in that dividing, we don't help anybody. It's like walking down the road to with the Good Samaritan, walking down the road, seeing a man in a ditch and saying, what did he do to deserve to be in the ditch like that? My grandparents worked in the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta. They worked there all their lives. My parents worked in the factories that used to be in the Mississippi Delta all of their lives. They worked harder than anyone that I've ever known. And they are living and dying proof that hard work alone does not mean that you can make it out of poverty. Especially when those jobs pay poverty wages with little or no benefits. I'm going to disagree with you. Our system is not broken. Our system is designed against the poor. If it was designed for them, we would not have poverty. Poverty is by design, and it profits industry leaders immensely in the state of Mississippi. A fully funded and robust TANF program is the least we can do for the least of these. It's not giving food to the hungry, it's giving a little food to the hungry. It's not giving water to the thirsty, it's giving a little water to the thirsty. Barely enough not to die. TANF, operating well and right, can save people's lives. It's a moral issue. It's a moral issue whether we will save people's lives or let them die the slow death of poverty, the soul rot of poverty. We have a moral and religious responsibility to do something, and a fully operable TANF program is a great first step. I encourage you all to work like my grandparents and parents to ensure that the least of these in Mississippi can have a fighting chance to make it here. It's never a matter if we can do something. It's a matter of if we will do something. We can, at the very least, do this. Thank you for my time.
Can I get the church to say amen? Now, Dr. Coker, we actually open the floor to members of the House and the Senate who may have questions. Representative Summers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Pastor, for that sermon. You said a couple of things that I wrote down that I thought were extremely important. You said that we create this kind of poverty. The system is designed against the poor. And my question is the why. Mm-hmm. Why do you think this system is designed against the poor? Why do you think we continue to create this kind of poverty?
I think we all know that answer.
From your perspective.
I think it's racist to the core, and it's based on white superiority. It's based on that some people are better than others. Some people deserve stuff and others don't. I mean, I think that the TANF scandal that we've seen was we have all this money for the federal government that's supposed to take care of the needy families. And those in charge said they don't deserve it. We deserve it.
That's right.
And I think human inequality based on race, which is racism and white superiority, I think it is a root cause for everything we advocate for in Mississippi. Why don't we have Medicaid expanded? Why don't we have SNAP benefits the way they need to be? Why do we have to advocate all the time? I think it's rooted in our history that is alive and present in our moment. So I do think it's racist. I think it's based on stereotypes. That's also based on ignorance. And, we just don't, we don't believe everybody in Mississippi deserves help. And I think it's racist to the core.
Thank you so much. I know my members think that and have this sentiment that we should be working to implement more compassion in what we do. And, based on your response, compassion is not a part of the equation when we're dealing in policy. And so I just want to implore my members, my colleagues, to understand that we have to work towards implementing equity in policy and not get so ingrained in what the emotion is feeling or the heart is feeling, because that is not what plays out in this process. We've got to create policies that ensure that our families are receiving what they need. And so I think we have to look at it from a different lens, because to say that we should be more compassionate towards these people when we know why the system is this way, I think is counterproductive. And so we've got to do more work than that.
Can I just respond? I don't know if I just think about the last book that Dr. King wrote, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Last chapter. He talks about where do we go, and he lays out something like the GI Bill. He uses the GI Bill as an example for a Bill of Rights for the disenfranchised. And in that, his concept of the Bill of Rights for the disenfranchised, he says that it's definitely for the black community, but we have to also include the poor white community.
Amen.
That's a level of compassion that's pretty incredible, but it's also recognized that he said during enslavement and after enslavement, their labor was also devalued and they didn't get their fair shake. So the capacity to open the arms and bring in, that is compassion, but it's very strategic compassion for a goal. So I hear you loud and clear, but it made me think of Dr. King's idea of the Bill of Rights for the disenfranchised.
I think that's great, and I think it's also important to lift up that when we talk about equity, even though there is this vision of who we think is receiving benefits or is benefiting from this system, it's not just black people in Mississippi. And when we talk about equity, everyone ends up benefiting from that. So I know that there's a visual of this so-called, welfare queen or what have you that may be benefiting from this system. But the reality is that, as you said, that we also have poor white families that are recipients of these funds, and it helps all Mississippians when we're doing the right thing. Yeah.
We'll take two more questions from Dr. Corker. I know Representative Hullum was next. Any other members? Representative Hullum.
One of the most important things.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. One of the most important things of hearing what's been said today by Ms. St. Williams Barnes, by Nick, and yourself, it's safe to say in the state of Mississippi, which is a welfare state, there's prosperity in poverty. I say again, there's prosperity in poverty because 350%, the families who was over the 350% income threshold. Also, the new family who received the money, found out the money, and got convicted for the money. Also, we have people right now who have taken them same programs that Nancy knew them got convicted for. They have revamped them programs, and they are charging them out right now into different communities. Right now, just under a different premise, but the same thing. Also, to get away from the TANF scandal and put the focus on the actual individuals and the lack thereof, the people who need these resources the most vote the least. And we also say, when we look at it, this is a moral issue. And we're looking at it from your standpoint and your research. Would you say that the organizations, corporations around the state of Mississippi who continuously vote for the people in power in the state of Mississippi, they is just as guilty as the people who holding these funds from these poor families? Is that safe to say from your standpoint?
I think it's safe to say, and I would stay within my own lane to talk about churches in particular. You have large churches in the state of Mississippi that not only maintain the status quo, but create a theology to maintain the status quo. That is heretical to the core. You also have incredible churches that care for the most vulnerable, that are always here at the Capitol with voices standing together, with many of you. And I think within the religious realm itself in the state of Mississippi, you have a religious entity that supports some of the worst things in our state.
And I'm glad you said that because we start every session off with a prayer.
Yep.
And it's somewhere I read, it said, how did you rob me, D? And when you done it to the least of them, you done it to me. The people receiving TANF for the least of D. So how many of you all are going to come up here and stand with us continuously, not just one time, not just 2 times, but continuously to talk about robust programs that the TANF can use to help these individuals out. Because we refuse to have people to stand with us when it matters most. We don't need nobody standing with us when the TV's on, when the microphone's on. We need people to come here just like they support the other side and say, why have y'all not sent these people to prison? Why have not convicted these people? And why have y'all not took up the democratic platform of the policies and the law they put forth to even bring them out of committee? That's what we need. Anything else is a bunch of rhetoric. And it's time out for rhetoric in the state of Mississippi. Because the poorest people, like you said, poor whites, some blacks, they continue to vote for the supermajority in this state because they put their issues and their feelings before their people. Thank you.
Thank you, members, for the question. Thank you so much, Dr. Porter, for your testimony. We next will go to
Randy Kelly, Interim Senior Director and Advisor, Income Security Policy, Center for Budget and Public Policy. I'm sorry. Mr. Kelly is with Three Rivers Planning and Development. I should know that. I called him and invited him.
Thank you so very much. Number one, it's an honor and a privilege to be here today. We're only involved in one SMART of TANF, and let me first introduce 2 team members I have with me. To my left, Terry Treadaway. Terry is our Division Director on Workforce. And Gary Golden, stand up or raise your hand.
He's right here.
Gary is our Chief Operating Officer for Dislocated Workers under Workforce and TANF. Three Rivers is a private, nonprofit corporation. We operate, yes, 10 other corporations. You may have heard of a few of them. I know some of the House and Senate members have. The Pool Alliance came down here and walked the halls begging for money years ago. There's now a $2 billion investment sitting there with over 2,000 jobs and another 2,500 in suppliers. Thank y'all for your help, by the way, in closing that deal and incentives. We operate a regional landfill that is the number 1 in the state for tipping fees for public, private, and industrial and commercial lenders. This body gave us authority to come together to do that, and we have negotiated a contract to put a $39 million facility that will take the landfill gas, clean it, and put it back in the pipelines. So what Three Rivers is about is partnerships. Randy Kelly has never accomplished anything. What we're good at doing is bringing partners together, be it local elected officials, business in the industry, our House and Senate members, or our state agencies. And speaking of state agencies, if y'all don't know me, I can't see any of you, so if you're going to say something, you have to stand up and holler, but you can't raise your hand. Okay? I can literally say, I don't see black and white, so y'all not gonna talk. But I can also tell you, anybody that knew me 10 years ago before I lost my eyesight would say, I didn't see black and white. I see people. And people are the foundation of this state. I did have the signs explained to me, or posters you have up, and I want to tell you it's a new day in TANF. I have had the honor and the privilege of working with Mr. Bob Anderson, and he demands two things that are high on my list, and I'm proud to tell you this about him. Fiscal accountability. If you don't have fiscal accountability, you don't have anything. That's what happened to the Nancy News and the things y'all are seeing. And he demands program integrity. And it filters down through his folks. They look at us so many times, I think I'm in prison. But Mr. Bob, I appreciate your leadership and what you've done. I'm going to tell you the very small part of TANF we deal with. And I hope all of you, we brought 30 package, have a copy. That way you can see what we're doing and how it's worked. But thanks to Mr. Anderson's leadership, we're going by the philosophy in workforce related only is all I deal with. Give a man a fish and he'll eat today. Teach him the fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. We're in TANF workforce. We call it career steps. You will notice in the handout, in 4 years we've helped over 2,500 people, clients, in 27 counties that we represent in workforce. 80% of these, if I'm in another program that's got 80%, completed their training and stayed in the program. We are just built, let's say, the foundation to start. These people don't come knocking on your doors. I don't care if they're white, black, pink, or polka dot. You have to find them. It's boots on the ground. They've been promised the world since they were little bitty towheads, okay? And the world has never came through for them. You have to go find them. We put that brochure you're looking at in laundromats. We go to daycare centers. We go to cosmetology schools. We hunt them. We hunt them with our partners. We cannot accomplish anything individually. We contract with Northwest Community College, Northeast Community College, Etowah Community College, East Mississippi Community College, and Mississippi Department of Employment and Security, 4 counties. These are the trainers. I'm not an educator, folks. I don't pretend to be. I'm as good at numbers as anybody you'll ever see. The Lord bless me in that. But I'm not an educator. We go to our educators. That's what's made our regular WIOA, Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act funds, the top in the Southeast. But we don't try to train, we try to contract and partner with our trainers. Through doing this, we're giving the people the ability to fish. October 1, we signed a new contract. Already today, we have 82, Gary? 83 TANF eligible clients that signed up. Let me tell you where 4 of them are. Truck driving school. Now, that's in 15 days. I hope we get a lot more than 4. But it depends on them wanting to learn that ability to fish to a large extent. They've been promised the world, so it's difficult to convince them that this is real. These people making $20,000, $25,000 a year, that's about to have the ability in a few weeks to make $70,000, $80,000. That's how you turn our low income around. I don't doubt what the Reverend said or the previous folks that people have tried to prevent them from coming up. All right? But you got to give them a skill. If you don't have a skill, you ain't got anything to sell. I don't care if the skill is being a master BSer, okay? You got to have a skill. That's what our program does. Our program gives them a skill, gives them job opportunities. We served 682 clients last year under Mr. Bob's contract with us. Bear in mind, our unemployment rate in 27 counties is just under 3%, right at 3%. Tremendous employment. So many of them, we can get them a job. There's no question, many of them. We can help pay trial care while they're going through training. We can buy them boots if they need steel-toed boots or uniforms. We can pay for the training through the community college. We can even pay transportation to get them back and forth. DHS has set up a workforce from poverty to workforce program that can work. And we have just begun to touch the ice. It takes the partnerships we built them. If you'll notice in your handout, we started in the middle of COVID. That's tough. And we think we have had a very successful program. Is it where we want it? No, absolutely not. I want this whole committee to understand that. I hope instead of 682 that Mr. Bob one day will have the money and give us 3-4 times the money, and we're serving 6,000. But we've got to help these people who have the ability to pull themselves up by the bootstrap. Giving them money is great, and I understand the lady and the Reverend's words on that. Yes, you have to eat. You have to have a full tummy to sleep. You have to have a full tummy to work. But if we can teach them to fish, we'll provide them the ability to eat and raise their family for an entire lifetime. Again, Mr. Bob, thank you for your ingenuity heading this way. I'm going to tell you one funny, and then I'm going to shut up for questions on our program. I'm not going to try to read to you what we handed out to you, okay? I think all of you can read. Besides, I'd have a hard time reading. All right? The day that Mr. Bob sent us our first contract, my in-house lawyer comes up, walks in my office, shuts the door, and has his contract in his hand. He starts waving it. He said, "Have you lost your blank mind?" I said, "No." "Why?" He said, "Can you not keep up with the news? I know your computer reads everything to you. Have you not read what's going on with Ms. New and some of the things?" I said, "I have." And they said, "Why would you take this money?" I said, "Our people need it. You can't solve a crook. There is nothing wrong with the TANF workforce program. You can't solve a crook. Well, we have solved the crook in Mississippi. Y'all brought Bob Anderson to the table. Thank y'all for your time. We're excited about our program, what it's done. I encourage you to talk to any of our legislators about our workforce program. I do want to thank you about career coaches. Let me tell you, we have 78 career coaches. We think these career coaches, given time, will double our number of TANF clients. Why? They're with the kids every day. And the career coaches program, Ricky, you see it, testify to them. They're in the paper, they're on TV. They're knocking grand slam home runs with these kids. Everybody wasn't meant to be a neurosurgeon. Some of them were meant to be welders, industrial maintenance, plumbers. Have you hired a plumber lately? Many skills. We've had people go to LPN, certified nurse assistants, RNs. You got to go find them. You got to help, give them help, and they got to see somebody who really wants to help them. Thank you all, and God bless Mississippi.
You know, the only thing I'd like to add to Randy, we have 27 counties in the Mississippi Partnership. We serve somebody in every county. You know, we're not picking out, we're serving people everywhere. And like Randy said, this is boots on the ground. You can't stand in your office and think they're going to come to you. and we use every asset we got. Our career coaches are in every high school in our 27 counties. We use everything we can to bring in participants. And this has been a very good program for us, and we continue to grow the program. We plan on growing it in the future.
Thank you. We'll open it up for questions. I got a question before I go. And just a brief statement. I just want I appreciate you all being here. I think it's a wonderful program. But I also want you to understand that when we complain about the $260 a month, everything you talk about is what we're asking everybody else to do. And so we're not here advocating handouts. We're advocating a program just like you have, and we want to see it done other places. So you're here because we understood the success of your program, and that's the way the money ought to be run. As you heard Ms. Williams say, Ms. Sonia Williams-Barnes say, we need child care, you provide child care. They need transportation, provide transportation. They need help with resume, training, all the things. All we want is an opportunity for these people to be able to have a chance to work, and we're glad it's working here. We just want to see it working everywhere else. But thank you all for being here.
Mr. Representative, you're 100% right, but it is difficult.
I know.
These people have been promised the world, and again, this program started with this man. Y'all need to recognize he's done away with the volleyball courts.
We're at least satisfied with that part of his leadership. Thank you. Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kelly, I noticed that you talked about the success that you had in all 27 counties. Can you tell us how much money you're getting that are TANF funds? Can you tell us how much money you are getting that are TANF funds?
Tell you our new contract, $2.3 million per year.
Okay, and that's for this year?
Yes.
Okay, and so how long have you had these programs in place?
This will be our 5th year starting October 1st. We served over 2,500 clients. Didn't start out at 2.3. I do not know the exact figures, but I know the first one was 1. And in Washington County, a dear friend of mine, Tommy Goodwin, runs a very similar program through South Delta Workforce, serving 14 counties.
I'm very familiar with Tommy Goodwin and his program, and, well, we have a different opinion right there, but however, it is what it is. So, thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman from Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Mr. Kelly and his staff for coming down to the great job that they do for the community. It's indeed an honor to represent them in North Mississippi, and just want to commend them from coming down to just tell us what we do in North Mississippi and how we help the underprivileged to do things in the community.
Thank you. Well, gentleman from Marshall, and then lady from Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you as well, Ms. Kelly, for being here today. I think you mentioned it, but just for clarity, how many adults are gaining employment through the program again?
We need 682 last. You're talking about employment opportunity. We set a goal with the state with our contract, 75%. But I want y'all to understand, a lot of these individuals that come in our program, they are employed, but they're underemployed with low-skilled wages. So we're going to work with NDS in the future to do some wage data to see about average increase. But mostly, it's roughly 70% of the ones that are unemployed that come through our program. They get to
So,
we set a goal of 60% for our contract with the state. It's about 70% that goes to work.
okay, so but do you have a hard, concrete number? Do you have a concrete number of how many?
Not concrete, I can just give you a percentage.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Lady from Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for coming, and your colleagues for coming as well. You answered the gentleman from, where are you from, John Hines? Washington. Saying that you received $2.3 million a year. This year. And when did that start? Did that just start in October this month?
October 1.
October 1. And how much do you spend per individual? Because I see the numbers have increased since 2020, which I'm assuming the amount that you're also receiving has increased. So how much do you typically spend per individual? Per participant?
Cost per participant on average, on years before, cost per participant before it averaged anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 per participant.
That totally, madam, depends on, you get them in truck driving or you get them in community college, that's going to triple or quadruple. Truck driving school,
4,500, and that's 4 weeks and they're complete.
So it depends on what program you get them into. We have been blessed for a lot of ours to put them to direct employment because there's such a demand for employees in North Mississippi.
And
the training we get them and not direct to jobs, the more it's going to cost.
And the bulk of that money is being spent with the community colleges or the training programs?
Yes, ma'am. We contract, as I said, with all 4 of our community colleges in our 27 counties. Additionally, we contract them with WIOA money, our regular workforce program. So we have a great and a sound working relationship to them. One other factor that we're excited about the career coaches is Three Rivers in our base 8 counties. Remember earlier I said we operate 10 companies and the counties range from 3 counties to 82 counties statewide. We operate a guaranteed tuition guarantee for community college 4 semesters for 2 years to any student who graduates from high school and is accepted to community college. Three Rivers put $2 million in that. Private industry and local governments matched that 4-to-1, and we've been running that program for 12 years. So between workforce and tuition guarantee and career steps, if we can find the people and they really want that helping hand, we have opportunities to help them.
The gentleman from Marshall asked a question about the number of individuals that secure employment. I know you may not have that for this year, but in previous years, do you have a percentage or a number?
Yes,
You said 75?
around 75% of the individual with employment opportunity. Right now, that's boots on the ground because we have to provide follow-up to these participants that complete a training program, because we do not have a integrated system unless we put them in Mississippi Works with the statewide system and subcontract with Mississippi State to do wage data to see about average earning. So the 75% of the that I'm telling you about, these are our navigators who are able to hear back from participants once they complete a training program. They tell them where they're working and how much they're making, because we try to report that as well to the state when we do closeout for our outcomes, because we're all about outcomes, and these individuals with our other federal programs we're big on performance, and we have navigators to help coach them through the program to ensure their success, because we don't want them to be failures, we want them to be success. So that's why we're careful about what type of training that we put them in. It's going to lead to opportunity. It's going to help provide a self-sufficient way for their family.
And I just have 3 last questions. Are the training programs like the CDL license program, are they also providing funding for the training as well? Do they contribute any of their funds, or is your program covering the entire training?
Out of the program, we will pay for the training.
Okay, the entire training.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know if those individuals that do secure employment, are they remaining in Mississippi?
Yeah, most of them.
Okay.
The ones we're dealing with directly. Bear in mind, our program, madam, is very young. You say, well, you've had it 4 years. No, that's young. When you have to go boots on the ground to find people. Yeah, most of them are staying in this city.
Okay, and last question. You have in your overview that the ages of the people that you serve range from 18 to 59. What's the average age person that you're serving?
Average age is 25 to 35.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me tell so everybody here one thing. The TANF career steps, and this is not state, it's not DHS, it's federal, so y'all need to go to Washington and change it. Only has one shortcoming to me. Other than it's kind of good whiskey, it's got the age, it's got the growth, you got to get your contacts with your partners where everybody's at the same direction. And that is, you're required to be a custodial father or mama. They don't have to live with you. You can prove and show birth certificates that you have it. There are a lot of poor people who don't have kids. There's a lot of them out there. We can't address them. That is not the HS's issue. I want that clear. It's not Mr. Bogg and any rules they made. It is totally fair.
Thank you.
Only shortcoming we find.
Thank you. Gentleman from Lowndes and then gentleman from Hines.
Thank you, Leader. I'm just curious, to be eligible for your program, are the participants drug tested?
No, sir. To be eligible for our program, you need to have 1859 custodial or non-custodial parent is 200% below the property level. Meaning, if you take a single mother with one child, if she's not making over $40,000, she's underemployed making $33,000, she can be eligible for our program, as long as she has documentation that she's a parent.
Thank you. Gentleman from Hines. Gentleman Octibidal, wait a minute. Gentleman Octibidal, you had a question?
I'll pass on my question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and we appreciate the expertise in bringing us this good information about workforce development. My question is what I have been pushing here at the legislature is that are we involving any community workforce development agencies? Most of the money that I've made an analysis, large percentage of it anyway, goes to the junior colleges. They are qualified community workforce development organizations also. Are you contracting with those agencies to help enhance workforce development in your area?
The answer will be no. What we do is we go to the recognized trainers and give you a certificate. You got to have, if you want to be an industrial technician and make $60,000, you got to have one from a certified person to give you that, truck drivers or whatever.
No, sir.
There's also community-based people that, throughout our region, we just got from the Church of God in Monroe County nonprofit, five clients sent to us, and we helped them get free PCs to Accelerate Mississippi, to help their team members in going out and reaching people. So we don't contract with any community-based organizations for training. Our partners are strictly in the community colleges and the MBA.
Well, my next question is, why is that? Are you mandated to deal only with public entities?
We don't.
Just don't have it. I can't tell you what in our 27 counties. We have not turned any down that's ever approached us. How about we answer it that way? So you know of some in our 27 county base here, we'd be more than happy to talk to them. There's lots of people who want to do GED and stuff and start it there. Why start up new programs and have extra overhead when the community colleges are already doing it every day?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Washington, and then we'll go to our next presenter.
Thank you. I apologize, but you said something, and the gentlelady from Hines County, let's talk about the wraparound services. So if you're providing $2,500 for somebody, and the workforce program that your organization has, it has training dollars, and then the community college gets dollars, and Innovator get dollars, how much money does that one person get? Or are you using the administrative fees of all those programs to keep your organizational going?
One thing is made Three Rivers, Three Rivers is a pretty big corporation. We operate 10 different companies. I have 9 divisions. Workforce is just one. We do $13.8 million in garbage bills if we bring and deposit back to local governments, for instance. We run a regional landfill that generates about $40 million in total revenues and expenses coming year projected. We try to blend our programs to make it work the best. If we can give them something out of WIOA, if they can't get under TANF, it won't be the case. But if we could, we would work the programs together for what's best for the client. So, yes, administration, we've been blessed to share it among many programs. We have about 80 different contracts for our total office that pays my total team. But they're in everything from HA computer system for 16 counties, supposed to add 5 more in the next few months, to garbage collection, to workforce, real big in the lending business, private business, and then the Older Americans Act, thanks again to Mr. Anderson, we contract with him to carry it out, and the Medicaid waiver act under the State Department of Medicaid.
Thank you. We're going to take one more question. I'm going to yield to the chairman from the Senate, and he'll introduce our next guest after he asks his question.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. How much of your $2 million sub-grant spent on child care?
Not much at all, because what we do, our child care program is just served as a gap to allow those individuals to apply for a child care provider who subcontract with the DHS until they get on that program. But we only pay, if someone is eligible for child care, we only pay for a few weeks until they get on the program. We serve as that gap until they get eligible for child care.
It's not long-term. Child care, ladies and gentlemen, don't get us late. It is a problem statewide. It's not just poor people.
That's right.
I mean, point blank, my granddaughter has one little pro head that looks like me that's security. And they pay $200 a week. So child care is a major problem for statewide. It's a major problem in Toyota is looking at building a child care center. And many other industries in North Mississippi. It is a problem.
Thank you so much for your response. And I know you're saying it's actually temporary, it's for that gap period.
For that gap period until they get approved for a child care initiative that's provided by other organizations.
Okay, if you don't mind, can you quantify the value of that gap?
Well, usually we have spent anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. We just off the bat a few months ago, we were able to serve a young lady who was going through our internship program, and she needed child care assistance until she got approved. So we paid for a month of her child care that ran about $1,500 to $2,000.
Now I'm to the next presenter. I'm asking you to quantify how much of the $2 million is child care and providing for the community.
Basically, $1.9 million is what we set aside for what we call SNLG. Those are those services through child care, tuition assistance, work-related items, supportive service, anything for the individual. 1.9 million out of that 2.3.
We'll follow up.
We'll follow up. Our next presenter, we have Mrs. Sandra Murphy. She's a storyteller and community advocate for women and girls. Ms. Murphy, come through.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to share in such a meaningful conversation. There's a building located at 2829 Lakeland Drive. The building has been there for as long as I can remember, over 35 years. This massive building with mirrored windows has 16 bathrooms. Each bathroom has 3 stalls, so I'll let you calculate the number of toilets in that building. A cleaning staff member is assigned to refresh the bathrooms on Monday through Friday nights. The toilets are clean, the floors are swept and mopped, and the tissue and paper towels are refilled. Shining the stainless steel doors and bowls in the sink with a product called Sheila Shine seals each bathroom's cleaning deal. The supervisor would often ask how the bathrooms were getting cleaned so quickly. The reply is simple: training and tools. And when the two are put together, this is how it gets done. And who wants to stay in a bathroom cleaning longer than necessary? Over 30 years ago, I was on the cleaning staff and assigned those bathrooms. I was a young mother in school and cleaning 16 bathrooms every Monday through Friday evening was my job. I supplemented my income with the cash benefit from AFDC, which is now called TANF, to purchase needed items for my daughter and was approved for assistance with child care. I share that story because it is the beginning of what becomes a full circle moment for me. I don't know how many people were on AFDC when I was, but currently only 1,000 Mississippi families receive TANF. Yes, only 1,000 families. I'm pretty sure some of the people in this room wonder why there are so few people. This leads to the question: what are the barriers to such a beneficial program that can help so many Mississippians? Funds are available, but why aren't citizens applying? By a show of hands in this room, how many people in this room know how or where to apply for TANF? One person. For those who don't know, you know who to ask. If the person you ask doesn't know, do they know who to ask? The challenge with not knowing is this: after asking twice, most people stop asking. They stop asking because in their mind, it may feel like begging for something that should not be that hard to get. When asked if I know how to apply for TANF, over 30 years later, I can say yes. As a recipient 30 years ago, you would complete an application, go to the local Department of Human Services office for an appointment with required documentation, and the application would be processed. Today, I know where to go online, complete an application, and upload the required documents. Unfortunately, most people who qualify won't unless they are connected to a community organization or know someone who has received services and can answer questions. They don't apply. Yes, people have access to Wi-Fi, but more people in low-wealth communities use a cell phone to conduct business than a desktop computer or a MacBook. Another barrier is media and word of mouth. Yes, the two go together. If what people see in the press about TANF has given the state a proverbial black eye, a layperson may think funds are no longer available. However, we know this is not true. Transparency is important, and I appreciate the media sharing vital information to keep Mississippians informed. However, assumptions from transparency for people in this room and how those who qualify for TANF view the same transparency can look very different. Also, on the community level, people share information about resources or lack thereof, whether the information is accurate or not. My point is this: more people qualify, and we must work together to remove barriers to get people from applications to approval, receive services, and become gainfully employed with a livable wage and tax-paying citizens. 30,000 jobs are available in Mississippi. I have a question to consider and possibly an answer. If we have unemployed or low-wage workers in Mississippi, how do these workers fill the 30,000 available jobs? Well, I'm glad you asked. And this is where I bring you from one side of the table of TANF as a TANF recipient to the other side of the table as an employment readiness specialist. After getting my feet on the ground as a TANF recipient, I continued and graduated college, worked in the corporate world for a while, and in 2005, my heart led me to nonprofit work. My nonprofit career led me to partnering with an organization that partnered with the Department of Human Services to provide the required employment readiness classes for TANF recipients. The organization knew that how to complete an application, write a resume, and sharpen interview skills were not enough to remain gainfully employed and on track to a career. To that extent, the organization offered financial literacy, mobility counseling, GD classes, and other holistic services. The employment readiness class was not a one-day class or seminar either. It was Monday through Friday for 1 month. In some respects, the class simulates a work environment. One of the misconceptions that I would like to clear up in this setting is there was rarely a person in the class who, once expectations were set and a relationship was built, the participants did not want to be in the class. The goal every month with each group of students was to give tools and opportunities to practice the tools provided and confidently complete the class. I want to share a tool I would give participants in a monthly employment readiness class. I want y'all to think about a triangle. Now, a triangle has 3 sides. Now, if you're trying to get a job, the sides are to submit an application, interview, and get the job. But if you never get the job, something isn't connected on the application or the interview. We worked on the sides once participants could see where a side was falling short. For applications at the time, I was an instructor. The most comprehensive application available to use as a teaching tool is the one from Sal and Lucas. One of the key questions highlighted is availability. No one in this room has open availability and can work every shift in a 24-hour day. Something as simple as the answer to this question can affect the ability to keep a job due to attendance issues. Again, resources connected to TANF work, but we have to get people approved and connected to the resources. Initially, I shared my story, but I want to share a client success story by taking you through her TANF experience. To protect her identity, we will call her Diane. Diane has 2 children and is approved for TANF. She began the weekday employment readiness class, which lasted 1 month. Navigating a new norm of not being employed and having to come to a class was a challenge. Still, she settled in once she understood how she could be in the class without worrying about quality child care for her children and gaining much needed information to assist in her school and employment journey. The class was like a full-time work shift. The group will work together from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. To answer a question you may be wondering about, if you're not working or in school, class is your job. No one on TANF sits at home and watches TV, enjoys free childcare, and uses the cash stipend unwisely. Diane was a part of one of the first classes I taught as an employment readiness specialist. She completed the class and returned to college for her bachelor's degree in social work. After working in her field for a while, she returned to college for a master's degree in social work. With education and experience, she worked towards a livable wage and employment that is a career and not just a job. She also came off the TANF rolls way before the 60-month limit. Another misconception is that approved recipients can receive TANF indefinitely. That is not true. With $174 million in unused TANF funds, I'm confident that legislators can ensure cash assistance, transportation, or workforce development training can happen. The industries that our government courts to come to Mississippi go hand in hand with training. If lawmakers encourage industry to come to Mississippi, Mississippians should move from training to time clock to paycheck to taxpayer. Remember when I mentioned training and tools in the beginning? TANF-eligible Mississippi recipients can use these to move beyond cleaning bathrooms to livable wages and careers. I encourage everyone listening to champion the need to remove barriers and for more Mississippians to be able to utilize the TANF program. I also encourage industries to welcome trained workers so they can become citizens who earn a livable wage and contribute to the well-being of Mississippi and their family. Thank you.
Okay, you got to stay. We got questions.
Okay.
Gentleman from Hines.
Okay.
Thank you for Chair, thank you for recognition. Ms. Rowe, a couple of questions for you, please.
I'm not Ms. Robin.
She's Ms. Murphy.
I apologize. But in listening to Simon Barnes as I was driving in, and listening to the stats that she gave us about TANF, the benefits. If you don't mind me asking, what was your benefit and when you received that?
Oh, that was over 30 years ago.
Yeah, I did.
The cash benefit was, I think, 108, maybe something around there. It was very low.
I think she just told us like 250 or 260. Now,
Yeah.
which is still not much.
It's not that much.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, did they require you to do any type of drug test? I mean, how was it back then compared to
Back
now?
then, no, there was no required drug testing. One of the things they did, of course, you had to apply, go to the office, you do the paperwork. It was a process like that. It was not like what it is now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Dr. Jason Coker, once coming to listen to him, and he talked about Mississippi having quote-unquote institutionalized poverty.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do things in Mississippi as far as raising the minimum wage and other things to get people out of poverty. We look like we just want to leave them in poverty, and whatever happens to them, just so be it. But it's not the Christian thing to do.
Well, and this is my opinion. This is my personal opinion. Is it raising minimum wage, or is it raising skill set so it can get to a better job that you don't have to worry about raising that? I think we have to think about it in terms of it's some different things that can happen, because we can raise minimum wage all day long, but if we're not giving people the skill set to match what that wage is it a hand up or a setup? I mean,
Come on.
I mean, is that what it is? If we're paying people more based on a skill set that they don't have, is it a hand up or a setup? I think it's a setup, because if you go to another place with that same amount of money, you want that same amount of money with that skill set that is not there, that ain't gonna add up. Okay.
One area question, you've heard, of course, as the Roe versus Wade, the Dobbs decision. Is there any way you could reconcile as a recipient of how does Mississippi say we care about children, but yet once they get here, we don't seem to care about how they live, how they get the diapers? Of course, I heard it say about $80 to $100 a month for diapers, food, and so forth. Anyway, think we could reconcile that, or they can reconcile that?
The only thing I can speak to on that is is the community with all of the different things and partnerships and other ways that we can support people in the community. Everything that a person needs to live and thrive and be does not necessarily have to come from the government. Some of these things can come from community. We have to be a community that steps up and gives and does and those kinds of things. You know, I remember being in elementary and middle school where those community service programs, they could come into the schools and do those things. But now we have to have organizations outside of the school thinking out of the box, doing those things. So you have to look at those different ways to meet those needs. And all of the needs cannot be met by, government.
I heard earlier, the number, I think $157 million in TANF funds available.
174.
Well, 174 available, and only maybe 7% of the people receiving that, maybe like $63 million, $63 million. And I mean, that seems to be ludicrous to me when we have such a great need here in Mississippi.
Well, we have to remove some of the barriers that I spoke about. We have to remove some of the barriers with people applying. We have to remove some of the barriers that just exist even within that process. Now, I can't speak to all of that process, but I do know from working as an employment readiness specialist and working with an organization that was a partner with the Department of Human Services, there are some barriers there. Can we overcome those barriers? Of course we can. It's enough people in this room that if we sat down and had a real conversation, plotted it out based on who we were serving, not necessarily about what we feel like is the right thing to do, we can overcome those things. We have got to talk to the people that need these services and want these services and say, look, if you could stay open till 6 o'clock, I could come in there and apply because I got to pick up my kids between 5 and 5:30. You know, that can be a barrier too. So we have to be honest about what the real barriers are and what we do as a community and government to overcome those barriers within the policies and procedures that we write.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Gentleman from Octavia Hall and then gentleman from Harrison.
Thank you so much for being willing to answer questions. I've worked with the TANF program for a very long time, ever since it was the previous program you mentioned. One of the things that disturbed me about it is that there was always this, and I don't know if it's been removed or not, but you had to put the father on child support to receive benefits. Is that a current practice that's being used now?
Now, I have not been an employment readiness specialist for about 4 years. And so some of those things may have changed. I don't want to speak out of turn to what that is. That could still be the case, but I don't know.
Well, that was one of the things that I thought was very egregious. And when you talk about barriers, and then also, with the amount of money, the almost $75 million you're talking about, with the $93 million in theft, we're talking about close to $200 million that could be allocated towards these programs with only 7% usage. And I'm one of the first people who will talk about pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, but, it's a poor government that doesn't even provide you with boots, strings, especially for the folks who, and I think what I'm trying to do in a very gracious way, if I may, is to say, yes, we have a responsibility to our families to do so. And at 7% with over $200 million that needs to be allocated, and which eventualizes into a slush fund for some bad actors. We need to make sure that we're giving out every dime possible to these needy families, and whether we're talking about a hand up or a handout. At some point in time, I was in the grocery store, and this is a personal rant, and I was talking to a colleague from Minnesota, and I was embarrassed because I was making comment about our border policies, and I said that $7.25 is our wall for border policy. Nobody's trying to break into Mississippi because of $7.25. And this gentleman said, well, I'm from Minnesota. We make $18 an hour minimum wage. So there's a great responsibility we have in the state of Mississippi, and I just wanted to be on record saying that folks in this room are fighting every day to make sure that that 7% turns to 70, and I hope that that happens in our careers here as legislators. Thank you.
Gentleman from Harris. And then gentleman from
I want to say I commend you for being able to change your lot in life. That I do. But being a representative for an area that's low to moderate, when the state of Mississippi received money from the federal government, those people in my community from which I come from grew up, went to school, graduated, served 22 years in the military, retired Army, they came back to serving them right now. They expect that money to come back to help them because that's not Mississippi money. And when people tell them that they can get together, come together, make these programs and all these things to help them out, that's a slap in their face. Because what they're doing with TANF, what they have done is what people do on the Mississippi Gulf Coast every day. They write grants for our community, and the money is never spent in our community. Over $200-some million, that's all Chairman just said, is 7%. That's criminal anywhere in America outside of Mississippi. So it's like not preaching to the choir, but talking down upon the people who you write the money to get for. You know, we're in this situation right now with this TANF money. We're having all these hearings. You know what's going to come out of this hearing? The Democrats just crying. They want to put more people on the welfare roll. They want to give more cash payment to people who don't deserve it. But I'm here to tell you and share with you, the federal government gave that money to the people, not Mississippi. And Mississippi continues to get money and continue to browbeat people and put people in positions that want to hold us. I'm very emotional because I came from the freaking projects in Gulfport. And people work hard down there. And when a person or mother go try to do anything and make $20 more, she'll penalize. He's penalized. Or some father who have not paid his child support, lose his job. What are they supposed to go to? It's easy to stand on the high side of this and say, what we need to do as communities. But it's the same thing we say to Mississippi and ambassadors of Mississippi who write federal programs, federal grants, where is money coming from? We want the money. Even Martin Luther King said, we coming to D.C. to get our check. That's not the money of Mississippi. That's these people's money. Mississippi is a welfare state. And we continue to beat down the people who we talk about that we are going to lift up on a day-to-day basis.
All right.
This TANF system is broke. It's been broke. It's not being fixed. Mr. Bo just said the workforce development inside all communities. They are stripping them day after day, sending everything to community colleges. People are not going to community colleges. They go up there for the first couple of days, they sign it, and then they leave, they don't complete the program. We are tired of circumstance. We want to see results. And I'm tired of coming to these hearings, knowing these people that they can polish some words together. That don't mean nothing. Ms. Sonny Williams Bourne just told us several times how this money is being misspent, misutilized. I can't give you $100 million of my money and you go around and brag and say, you got the Taj Mahal in your backyard. That's my money. And that's what's being done in the state of Mississippi. The people can't even apply for TANF. But we just got $1 billion for internet connectivity, and the people still can't get it because they don't have a laptop. But I'm just telling you and sharing with you, certain words are weaponized in our community. Telling people to pull themselves up, that's a weaponized against us when we know for a fact that money was used off the backs of all demographics.
Gentleman from Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thank you, Ms. Murphy, for your candor and courage to tell your story. We appreciate you coming in and sharing with us. And I'd just like to ask you one question. The program that you work with they receive TANF dollars. Do you know about how much? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will have the star of our hearing, Executive Director, Mr. Bob Anderson. Thank you, Ms. Murphy.
Outstanding job.
I would implore our members that we've been a little relaxed about it, but let's try to ask questions as much as possible. And if you have, testimonies, let's save those till afterwards, but let's try to stick to asking questions. Thank you. There you go.
All right. I want to thank you for the invitation to be here. I got to tell you, though, I feel a little bit like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rockets now. I am sitting here at your disposal. I'm not, going to run from any of your questions, but I'm sure you're going to have some questions that are going to be not my favorite thing to talk about. But the governor asked me to take this job, and I agreed to do it 4.5 years ago, and I think I've tried to do everything I can to improve what clearly we all know was a broken program. It was broken in the last administration. It was not doing what it was supposed to do. I tell the folks at the agency that we are moving that agency toward excellence, but I will be the first to admit we got a long road toward excellence. So we're still working on fixing the problem. I want to say something else to you before I get into my remarks as well. I teach a senior adult Sunday school class. Anybody to keep you on your toes, it's a bunch of senior adults because they're an interesting bunch to work with every Sunday morning. But I used an example. We were talking about connecting with the people you're talking to. And I used the example, y'all remember, well, some of you are old enough. Some of you might have to go look in the history books. But when John F. Kennedy went to West Berlin back in June of 1963, during the course of his presentation, his speech, he said at least 3 times, Ich bin ein Berliner. Ich bin ein Berliner. And what he meant by that, how that's translated is, I'm a Berliner. I am one of you. I understand what you're dealing with. Well, I want to tell you, I am not unfamiliar or a stranger to need. Y'all have heard my story before. You know, I grew up with my mom having to become a breadwinner for 6 of us at 30, having never worked outside the home when my dad deserted us. And we went on aid to families with dependent children. We went on food stamps. I keep a $1 food stamp, the actual stamp, in my desk just to keep me humble, remind me where I came from. We were on Medicaid as well, and we lived in what's called we called it the low rent housing project, because that's what it was. It was the old cinder block houses, duplexes. We had the 2-bedroom side, all 7 of us crammed up in the 2-bedroom side, and there was another family over in the 1-bedroom side. There were 4 of them. So I know what poverty looks like. What I wish I knew is what my friend Jason Coker was talking about. Jason and I have worked together in his former role when he was coordinator for a group called the Mississippi Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. I was state moderator for that group a number of times. It was sometimes felt like a bad penny. I'd give that job away and he'd come back to me a couple of years later. But what we were doing then is what he's still doing today, and that is trying to solve this issue of poverty. I wish I had an answer. What I know is it takes all of us. It takes every one of us concerned about the people who among us are the least of the least, and our willingness to say, what I do matters. What I do matters. What every one of us does matters. I'm going to be honest with you, that's not the way we govern these days. I wish it were. That's not the way we govern Mississippi. Let me make it clear. I wish it were. But I want to remind you, too, I have to operate within the framework of the law that exists, because I'm not a lawmaker. You are the lawmakers. You get the opportunity to change the law. I get the opportunity to bring recommendations to you and ask you to make those changes. So let's talk a little bit about Mississippi's TANF program. You know what the program is? It has 4 basic statutory goals: providing assistance to needy families so children can be cared for in their own homes or in the homes of relatives; ending dependence of needy parents on government benefits through work, job preparation, and marriage; reducing the incidence of out-of-wedlock pregnancies; and promoting the formation and maintenance of 2-parent families. Now, I remind you, these are not Bob Anderson's goals. These are not Mississippi's goals. These are the 4 statutory goals that back in 1995 and going into 1996, when Congress said we're going to do away with traditional welfare, the aid to families with dependent children, and we're going to create workfare. We're going to call it temporary assistance to needy families. That's where these goals came from. And they've been in the law ever since then. What does our version of it look like? Well, we receive about $86 million in federal funding under the TANF program every year in Mississippi. It's actually going to be a little less than that. It's been about $86.5 million. Our friends in Neshoba County and other parts of the state who are part of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians have decided to carve out their own TANF program, and they will be receiving a small portion of our TANF grant beginning in the current fiscal year. It'll only be about $1.5 million, I think. It's based on the number of families in the tribe who would have qualified for AFDC back in 95 and 96. That's how every state's grant amount is determined, based on the percentage of people we had who were receiving AFDC back in 95. So, as everybody knows already, the smallest portion of that money goes to direct support payments and transportation costs for families. In state fiscal year 24, it was $4.5 million, about 5% of the funds. $25 million of that we converted during state fiscal year 24. I think all of you appreciate that child care is a barrier to entry to the workforce. No 2 ways around it. I actually had a debate with the executive director of the Mississippi Manufacturing Association, who said child care is not a workforce problem. I said, sir, I don't think you recognize what our workforce looks like if you don't understand that child care is a barrier to, let's be honest, more than half of the population who need to get into the workforce has to consider child care. And so we converted $25 million in TANF funds to child care development funds so that we could continue to fund more child care vouchers for families that qualified for those vouchers. And you've asked me to talk about outcomes. Well, one of the outcomes that is absolutely true from converting those funds to child care development funds is every dollar we convert to child care and every voucher we devote to child care means there's a mom in the workforce. 90+% of our child care vouchers go to moms. I'm not saying all custodial parents are moms, but the vast majority of those who apply for vouchers through our program, 90+% are moms. And so every voucher that we fund and that we can continue to fund means there's a mom who's able to have peace of mind when she gets up in the morning and takes her children to the daycare center and can go to work. We also, this is something that was in place before I arrived on the scene back in March of 2020. We were already sharing TANF funds with the Department of Child Protection Services, which was in again, out again, part of this agency, not part of this agency. It's now completely separate as of last year when this body spun it off completely by itself. But because they do not have adequate funds to support the 4,000 plus children who are in our child welfare system, we supply $29 million a year via a subgrant with CPS to help fund the child welfare program in Mississippi. Now, I want to say to you, and I hope Commissioner Sanders will say this to this body or to the legislature as a whole at some point. I'm very pleased with what they're doing with that sub-grant money. I'm particularly pleased with what, they have to submit a budget to us. They're a sub-grantee just like every one of our sub-grantees. So they have to send us a budget narrative telling us what they're going to use that money for. And the most recent sub-grant for CPS was just approved. I signed it about two weeks ago. It was effective. It went into effect October 1st with the new federal fiscal year. They are committing a large majority of that sub-grant to Canopy to do home assessments to try to keep families from getting into our child welfare system in the first place. And I, for one, believe if we can do adequate assessments that may mean something simple as a child can't stay in this house because there's no bed for this child to stay in. Well, we can use TANF funds to buy a bed for that child to have a place to live so they don't get separated from their family and enter into the child welfare system. Because as anybody who knows anything about our child welfare system knows, once that child is separated the first time, it is difficult to get to reunification. It's very difficult. $26 million was awarded to sub-grantees to provide a number of different services. I have a chart a little later that will tell you where all of our sub-grants are, what type of work it is to support families. So the TANF program, yes, it's designed primarily to provide monthly cash assistance to families in extremely low-income households. Right now, our income threshold is about 50% of the federal poverty level, I believe. So it's a very low number to qualify for TANF. That's one of the barriers, among others. All right, so TANF funds have to be spent in support of the 4 statutory goals. I wanted to show you what the numbers look like right now. Well, as of federal fiscal year 23 is the most recent year we have. We had 1,602 families who were in the program. That represented 2,822 individuals. I want you to understand a concept that's probably foreign to most of you, and that is we have what's called child-only TANF cases, where the only person in the household who's eligible for TANF is the child. Now you might say, how can that happen? Well, you might have a grandparent or 2 grandparents who are on, maybe even on Social Security or retirement or disability, but their income is too high to qualify them under TANF, but the child needs the help. And so the child qualifies for TANF assistance. So we have child-only TANF cases. And the numbers are, even though we have a $260 a month benefit level for a family of 3, some families, like if it's a 1-person child-only case, don't qualify for that full $260. They qualify for the $200 minimum. If you look at our statute, which I don't do this job for acclaim or fame or anything like that, but one of the things I did when I first came into this job was I came to you in 2021 and said, we need to raise the monthly benefit amount. The starting place was $110 plus $36 for the second person in the household who qualifies for TANF and $24 for each additional person. You enacted a $90 increase, bringing the minimum amount to $200. So those child-only cases are $200 cases, essentially. Then one child recipient, the average is 200. 2 children, 237. You see the numbers there. 260 is for a 3-child household, and 4 or more, the average is $300. Total individuals, again, 2,822 people qualified for TANF in the fiscal year 2023. And you had asked for the demographic breakout of those people who were in the TANF program, and there it is. 1.9% were Hispanic, 18.9% were white, Caucasian, non-Hispanic, 79% were black or African American, and then we had 2% who at that time were American Indian, Native Americans, and then we had a small portion, didn't even amount to a 0.1% or a number that we could report, of Asian and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. So that's what the demographic looks like. Child recipients, because that's the majority of our population. There were a total of 2,503 recipients in fiscal year 23, and the children among that population, the largest portion were ages 6 to 11 and 12 to 15. Smaller portion who were infants or toddlers up to age 5, and then a very small portion who were 16 to 18 years old. Among the adults, the largest number who received any TANF assistance were 20 to 29 years old, and 30 to 39-year-olds were the second largest group. And then we had a small number of folks under 20 and a small number from 40 to 50 and beyond who received TANF assistance. Now, there's a lot of talk about barriers, and there are barriers. I've talked to you about barriers. I've talked to the legislature about barriers. I've advocated for some legislative changes around the program at times, but I want you to see something, and I'm not asking you to try to absorb this flow chart. This is a workflow description. This is just the client side of the equation. This is what a TANF recipient has to do in order to apply for benefits. And it's unbelievable. I mean, just looking at it, it's unbelievable what is required of an applicant. And at every turn, see if this doesn't have a pointer. Okay. At every turn, you have case denied is hanging in the balance every time. Something doesn't go as it should for that person who's applying. So it's a very difficult side. Now, this is just the client side. There's another flow chart like this that shows what we have to do internally in order just to qualify somebody for TANF. Now, I want to beg to differ with, I believe it was Ms. Murphy, about how do you know how to apply? And I saw some smirks when I raised my hand and said, I know how to apply, but what I hope a lot more people are going to know, and we're confident they are beginning to know, we completely revamped MDHS's website back in January, and we made it as user-friendly as we could. And one of the other things we did is we designed it purposely for mobile users, not for folks who have a laptop, not for folks who are, have access to a laptop. 78% of the people we encounter on our website are using our mobile app. They're connecting with us with a mobile phone, and they have full access. There is a box on our website now that says simply, I need help with, and it's a blank. And you fill in the blank. If you fill in TANF, it'll take you immediately to the TANF page and it'll walk you through what is required to apply for TANF. We've made it as user-friendly as we can. Mark Jones, who's our Chief Communications Officer over there, and Claire Graves, who's our Chief Innovation Officer next to him, they spent an inordinate amount of time. They spent several months testing that website, redesigning that website with an outside vendor to make it as user-friendly as possible. And I think it will make it much simpler for folks to find where to apply for TANF. One of the other things that's in this workflow is, yes, drug tests. There's a drug test requirement. I'll say again, this is not Bob Anderson's drug test requirement. It's in the statute. I didn't put it in the statute. I can't take it out of the statute. I have to comply with what's in the statute. But what I want you to understand about the drug test is taking a drug test doesn't mean getting a positive result does not mean you are automatically excluded from TANF. It means we send you to rehab, treatment, substance abuse, and then if you complete the substance abuse, you come back and we pick up your case after you've completed your substance abuse program. The other thing is there's been a lot of misunderstanding about how many people we drug test every year. So the most recent numbers I have are from August of 2023 until June of this year. We drug tested a total of 59 people. 59 people were drug tested for TANF.
Out of the 2,800.
Yes, right. And out of those, a total of 6 tested positive. So only 6 people had rehab offered. Now, mind you, we offer the rehab. We can't force anybody to go into rehab just because that's a requirement. And one of the things you'll see if you want me to send you a copy of this so you can make it larger and look at it more closely is all throughout this, in addition to case dismissed, is client abandoned application. And every client has the right to withdraw their application at any stage of the process. And I can't tell you how many folks withdrew of those 6. They may have attended drug rehab and come back and qualified. I don't know. I don't have that number. But what I know is we have a contract with a company called MedScreen that does our drug testing. And we spent a total from July of 2023 to July of, well, let me give you the whole time period. From July 23 to August of 24, we spent $3,567 on drug testing. Not even $3,600 on drug testing. And we have another vendor who does medical screening for us. There is an option under TANF for a medical disability. You can qualify for TANF and get a work exemption if you have a disability. Well, just like any other person applying for disability, we expect some medical support for that disability. So we use a medical screening company to do a medical disability evaluation. We've spent about $8,000 during the August 23 to October until this month, $8,000 doing medical screenings for folks who would qualify for TANF on a disability waiver. Okay. Next thing I want to talk with you, with respect to TANF assistance, the program is designed as a work-fair program, I think is the way it was initially described, a welfare to work program, if you will. And so with respect to families receiving TANF assistance, our agency has to assess each adult recipient or teenage parent's skills, work experience, and employability. We have to engage them in work within 24 months. If we can find a place now, I'll be the first to admit there are a lot of counties where we can't find any work for them because there are not any jobs there. but we have to attempt to find work for 24 months. And if we can't, we are obliged to sanction a family who refuses to comply with that work requirement without good cause. And good cause is a real flexible phrase. We have some latitude there because, as you've already heard, our sanction is a harsh sanction. It's a whole family sanction. I didn't write it into the law. I can't write it out of the law, but it is in the law. And it's in a law that started out as House Bill 1090, and it's still in there. It requires us, when a person in a household, a TANF household is sanctioned, the whole family is sanctioned. That law also permits, I won't say require because it's not clear that it requires, but it permits the agency to sanction that family with respect to SNAP benefits as well. And then families have to meet the the agency has to try to reach our work participation standards. And the Administration for Children and Families, the federal agency that runs the program, they set our work participation standard. We're currently required to reach a 50% work participation standard under TANF. Now, what are the work opportunities? What qualifies as work under TANF? Well, a lot of things. Unsubsidized employment, subsidized private sector employment, subsidized public sector employment. Looking for a job and getting job readiness assistance for 6 to 12 weeks counts as work. Community service can count as work under the TANF program. Unpaid work experience can count as work. On-the-job training, vocational educational training for a maximum of 12 months, caring for a child of a recipient in community service can count as work. Job skills training directly related to employment. In other words, what we've been talking about lately, upskilling, learning a better trade, a better paying trade can count as work. And then completion of a secondary school program can count as work under the TANF program. So it's a little more than just the traditional go get a job. There are a lot of opportunities that will qualify as work under the TANF program. I went the wrong way. Now, it's already been said, and I report this to you every year, so I don't know how many of you look at our annual report, but we do report to you what we are doing with TANF money. And we do spend $27 million a year on sub-grants. Those are sub-grants that, in our view, just like Mr. Kelly was talking about, are designed to help get people either ready to get into the workforce, to help them get into the workforce, or to help them stay in the workforce if they're already in there. So we award essentially 3 different types of sub-grants under TANF. Workforce training and education programs, and those go along with one of those TANF goals. They're designed to end the dependence of needy parents by promoting job preparation, work, and marriage. And they provide workforce training and education designed to help lead to sustainable wages and provide support services to try to mitigate barriers to self-sufficiency. We have a large number of sub-grantees who provide what's called after-school programs and activities. It's designed to reduce the occurrence of out-of-wedlock pregnancies, but it also allows parents, for example, to finish a work day while their child has an after-school program that they can participate in at the YWCA, at the a local community center or something of that nature. This engages the participants in tutoring, leadership development, family and community responsibility, career discovery, and it also has some college and ACT prep offerings from our various sub-grantees. And then we have parenthood initiatives, which go along with that TANF goal of encouraging the formation and maintenance of two-parent families. And these parenthood initiatives provide encouragement of family formation and preservation through education about what it means to be a parent. I know that sounds paternalistic because it is. That's written into the law, though. That is written into the law.
Federal law and state law.
State law and federal law. It's in both. If you want to change it, then you have the opportunity to change it, but that is the law. Okay. One of the other things I hear a lot about is transparency. We're not transparent enough. I have to differ on that count. I believe we have endeavored to be as transparent as possible. I think by being here today, I'm telling you, I'm willing to be transparent. Otherwise, I'd be sitting over there on Lamar Street saying, I can't give you any time, Mr. Simmons, Mr. Johnson. I'm too busy. I can't give you my time. I'm a public servant, and I have no qualms about telling you what we are doing. And I want you to see, and again, I don't do this for a claim. I do it because we need to fix this program. And so some of the things we have done over the last 4 years to fix this program is, all of us know the biggest problem in 2019 was the executive director that ran this program. So we have taken the executive director entirely out of the RFP process for these TANF grants. I can't even initiate a procurement for a TANF sub-grant. I don't have that authority anymore. And frankly, I'm not looking for it. I don't want it back. And I'm not involved at all. Let me rephrase that. The executive director, because I won't always be here, but I hope they will keep these rules in place long after I'm gone. The executive director is not involved in any part of the scoring process for an RFP proposal. And in fact, the executive director doesn't even know who has applied for a TANF sub-grant, who submitted proposals. All of these RFP proposals are scored by a selection team, and the potentially successful proposals have to score. We set this back in 2020, late 2020, when we did the first RFP under this new process. We said we're going to put 100 points in this RFP. You have to score 75. I think most of us agree when we were in school, 75 wasn't a great grade, but at least it was a passing grade. So we require a passing grade, basically. If you get 75 points, then you're eligible for a sub-grant. Now, scoring 75 doesn't mean you're guaranteed a sub-grant. It means you're eligible and we go forward to the next step in the process. And once all of those proposals are scored by the selection team, then those who scored the 75 points are subjected to a risk assessment. I think we all would agree that there was some risk that was not assessed under the last administration, and it caused huge losses to this program. We do a risk assessment. All new sub-grantees, since we don't have any history with them, they're automatically assessed as high risk until we see how they perform. And they are also subjected to a site visit. You know, if you tell us you're going to provide after-school programs to children, then we want to come and see, well, what are you going to do with these children? What are you offering for these children? Where are they going to spend this time after school? If you tell us you're going to do workforce training, we want to come and talk to you and say, what kind of training are you doing? What kind of help are you going to provide to the clients that we send you for workforce training? I want to mention a partner, and they've been mentioned through Accelerate Mississippi and in other workforce training settings before, but they are one of our best partners. There's a group called Jackson Refill Initiative. Started out as Jackson Refill Cafe. They train people how to get to work. If I could replicate Jackson Refill Initiative about 100 and something times and put them all over the state, I think we could do some wonderful things because they have a success rate of preparing people for simple tasks like how to do an interview, how to dress for an interview, what an interview looks like, working people through an interview. And they have a wonderful success rate of getting people in jobs. That's what we're looking for in these partners. Now, existing subgrantees are reviewed for fiscal monitoring findings during their last subgrant term, and we look at their spending. Have you spent this money that we gave you? Because if they have shown little or no spending activity during their last subgrant period, it's likely we're not going to renew them. Why would we renew their subgrant if they're not doing any work, if they're not spending any of your money on helping people who need the help? Next, once the risk assessment process has been completed and there's a subgrant, we prepare a subgrant agreement between the agency and the subgrantee through our funding division. And for TANF, it's the Division of Workforce Development and Partnership Management. Primarily, it's the partnership management side of that division that's preparing those subgrants. Here is something else that we lose a lot of potential partners that might could do great work and help a lot of people, but we don't do any upfront cash advance subgrants at all. All of our subgrants are funded on a claims reimbursement model. We allow a 60-day advance, basically startup costs, if you will, for a brand new subgrantee to get into business. And then from that point forward, they do the work, they send us their claims, and we reimburse them for the work that they've done. One of the other things we've done in addition to upgrading our website is we have put all these subgrants that we've awarded on our website. We posted them on the website. We've gone actually a step further than that. Anybody in this room, anybody in this state who wants to know what we're doing with TANF RFPs, all you have to do is go on our website and you can sign up to receive a notice every time we do a TANF RFP. You'll get an email saying MDHS is opening an RFP on January the 1st, 2025. We may or may not open one in January, but you will get notice of that. And every subgrant that we have awarded, talking about transparency, we put it right there on the website, tell you who it is, when they applied, when they were awarded that subgrant. Subgrantees, this is another thing that was kind of ignored in years past. Subgrantees are subjected to fiscal monitoring review. Whenever they've spent 50% of their grant funds, we send an audit team out to check their homework, basically. They pull a sample of claims. They make sure there's documentation to support every one of those claims. And if subgrantees have question costs, they've got a few options. They can clear those costs by giving us the proper documentation if they haven't. They can repay the overpayment that we've identified. They can ask for a hearing through our administrative hearings division. If they don't clear those question costs after a second level administrative hearing, then the subgrantee pays those question costs back, or their last option is they can take an appeal and go into Chancery Court and argue their case in Chancery Court to try to get that question cost number set aside. Okay, who do we have subgrants with? This is the list of the folks we have at the moment. We will be announcing some new subgrants around the first of the year. We just finished an RFP and we just finished the scoring. They told me they finished the scoring a few weeks ago and they're doing the risk assessments and the site visits right now. And sometime soon they will tell me these are the folks that are going to be getting new subgrants. But these are the folks that we have. You'll see that they fall into these three categories: after school programs and activities, workforce training and education, and parenthood initiatives. Now, some of our partners do one, two, or all three of those. For example, Voice of Calvary at the bottom of the workforce training group. they do workforce training, and they also do parenthood initiatives. And so the number of people who are served in those three categories is not unduplicated, because there's some duplication between the different categories. But we had 7,000 recipients who were served with after-school programs and activities. We had about 5,500 scored through the workforce training and education programs. And then we had over 18,600 who were served through the parenthood initiatives. There was some talk about scholarships, and there are some scholarships included in these subgrants. You see the institutions of higher learning listed there. Well, they have a program called Complete to Compete that helps people complete their 4-year college degree. We fund that through TANF subgrants to the tune of about $1.5 million. And there are people every year who go back to school. A lot of these are adult learners who maybe got a year or two of college 15 years ago, and they said, I just never could finish my college degree. And they come back at 30 or 35 or 40, and they participate in Complete to Compete. They get that bachelor's degree, and then they're able to get back into the workforce if that's what they want to do, and that's usually what their purpose is. They want to complete that degree in order to be able to qualify for a job that they're looking at.
But these sub-grantees, that equals to $26 million.
I believe it does, Senator. I haven't done the math, but our team pulled this out of our existing sub-grants, and I believe the math will equal the $26 million that we mentioned in the very early. One of the things I want to remind you too about these after-school programs and activities, I said this earlier, those programs allow parents to complete the workday. And you see some Jackson Medical Mall is on there, Metropolitan YMCA is there, the Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs. They have a huge sub-grant with us because they have clubs all over the state, as you well know. And those Boys and Girls Clubs, I will tell you, I was already through with school, but two of my younger brothers took great advantage of the Boys and Girls Club, the Boys Club down in Jackson County when they were in elementary, junior high, and into high school. The Boys and Girls Clubs are good partners for us. And just, Starkville, Oktibbeha Consolidated School District, they do some wonderful workforce training in addition to teaching parenthood initiatives. So, again, we have a multitude. You will see the Planning and Development Districts represented here, as well as the Community College Board. Canopy Children's Solutions. Canopy is a partner with us in TANF, in addition to the work they do with CPS in the child welfare setting. But these are all of our existing sub-grantees. I think we're going to have a dozen coming in January. Is that the number right? Anybody know? I don't know what the number is. It's around a dozen, I think, will be coming on board in January. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk to you about, you asked me, what are some of the things, some of the changes maybe that this body could advocate for to make the TANF program work better, to make it more advantageous to folks. If my boss gives me authority, and I have a boss that I have to answer to, and y'all know who it is, it's the governor. If he gives me the authority, and he hadn't given me a yes or no right now, but I will be coming back to you asking for another increase in the monthly benefit amount. I agree with you. The cash assistance number is too low. And I will be coming before. And what we did in 2021, as we all know, it's been eroded by inflation by now anyway. That $90 is probably, I don't know, $40 maybe, $45 at this point. Maybe we're going to be asking for an additional increase in the monthly benefit amount.
How much?
We're asking for a $60 increase to take it to $320 as a starting point. And then you add $36 for the second person and $24 for each additional person. We do a pass-through right now. We do $100 a month pass-through. Somebody asked the question, I forget which legislator it was, about whether we still have a child support cooperation requirement. We do. That's written into the law. That's a requirement under the law. But the federal law authorizes us to pass through some of that money directly to the custodial parent. We're doing $100 a month right now, passing through $100, sending it directly to the custodial parent. It doesn't have an impact. It's not counted as income, so it doesn't impact anybody's TANF or SNAP eligibility. We are looking at increasing that, there are a lot of options. We can go under the federal law up to $200 a month, and we are talking about whether we can take it to that $200 level. That will put more money into the homes, into the hands of the people best qualified to know what their children's needs are, and that's the parents themselves. We are moving on this TANF sub-grant piece. We're moving to a continuous review cycle. And hear me when I say this, please, 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 if you know a nonprofit or a business that you think would be a good partner with MDHS under the TANF program, get on our website and send them, tell them about our website. And if we go in January to a continuous RFP process, that means every potential subgrantee who has an idea, all they have to do is send us their proposal. And we will have it scored and decide whether this is something that will add, advantage, that will be helpful to TANF families. Anybody who's potentially eligible for a subgrant, as I said, you can just sign up on our website to receive notice about opportunities. And Mr. Kelly said this, but it is so true. We do not have a large bench of nonprofit community-based partners across this state. We could use a couple, maybe 300, 400, 500 more, and we would love to do work with them if you will send them our way. Last thing, we send you a appropriation request every year, and we have to put these metrics in there that are 25 years old. I'm not sure they mean anything to anybody. In speaking with the folks at Elbow, I asked them, could we rewrite those metrics so that they look like our strategic plan? We adopted a new agency-wide strategic plan that's basic premise is we want to do what we can to help families thrive. And we're developing monthly dashboards, information dashboards from every one of our programmatic divisions, so I could look every month at what they're doing, how many families they're touching, how much money they're spending, and that's what I think we should be reporting, is not some outdated number of outputs, which is all we report in our budget right now. It's as one of my law school professors says, we just count noses. We're counting how many people that we're serving. Well, that doesn't tell you what the outcomes really are. And we have, and I did not bring those, Mark had prepared me some success stories. We have any number of TANF families who have participated in our program, some of whom have participated, and now they are eligibility workers helping other families. They're working with the agency. They best understand the program, but we have a sore need for TANF expertise in this agency. Like every state agency and every business, we have lost a wealth of institutional knowledge. We don't have a TANF expert at NDHS. I'll be the first to admit. We're looking for a TANF expert. And we need more pins in our county offices to train people to run the TANF program better. We need you to fund those county offices, every one of them. If Christy Kennel, the director of our Division of Economic Assistance Eligibility, were here today, she would tell you she could use about 200 more pens across the 82 counties where we operate, so that we can, one of the things we're trying to develop is a community resource advocate cadre of people who come in and do a needs assessment. I mean, they don't come in, they're already there. When a family arrives at our office, those community resource advocates, their assignment is do a complete needs assessment for that family. Find out what all their needs are. We want to get to that point in all 82 counties. We just simply don't have the people now. All right, I think I've probably talked as long as I should.
Go ahead. I have a question when you got it. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Director Anderson, for the question. I see you got some questions. I'll ask two questions first, and then we'll go to Leader Johnson, and then we'll go to Senator Blunt, and then I see some hands, gentleman from Washington County, and gentleman from Harrison County. I try to keep the questions in order.
Okay.
My first question, Director Anderson, is that you indicate that we have roughly 1,600 families that are being served and roughly 2,800 individuals. How many of those, do you have the numbers regarding how many applied as far as families and individuals? How many actual applications? Because we would like to know the denial rate.
I don't remember that being among the metrics y'all asked me to get. I just got your request last night, so no, I didn't pull that number. Okay. I'm gonna tell you it's significantly more than the number to qualify, because we still have a high denial rate, and there's no question about it. We have an abandonment rate that's very high, where people just throw in the towel and say never mind, and then we have a number of other barriers that enter into the approval rate being very low.
Okay, well, I really appreciate it. If you could just give us.
I can get you that number.
Okay,
we can get you that number.
And my second question before we go to Leader Johnson, you provided information over the last year that you're only spending about $3,500 for drug testing, and you only tested about 60 individuals and had about 6 of those individuals that tested positive. How do you feel, or do you support the recommendation to end the mandatory drug testing, considering the data you provided today?
Well, Senator, you're putting me in a box that I really don't want to be in. So I'm going to say, if the law is changed, I will enforce the law.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, you have my commitment.
Yes, sir.
That if the law is changed, I will absolutely enforce the law. Integrity and compliance are the two things I absolutely preach every day. And when the law changes, I'll follow it to the letter.
Okay, and we'll go to Leader Johnson before we go to Senator Blunt.
Thank you. To follow up with the question on the drug testing, I heard Mr. Kelly say in their program that you tout, and their tout is very successful, and it looks successful. They don't have any drug testing, and they're employing people and increasing their wages. Does Compete to Complete, do you know if they require drug testing?
I don't believe they do. I'm not aware that they do.
And I'm pretty sure they don't. Now, both of these programs are touted as successful programs. And so, have you considered, or has anyone looked into the fact that you talk about the denial rate and the number of people you serve, but have you considered that there are a number of people, not because they take drugs, but just the mere idea of having to go through that kind of testing, discouraging them from even applying? Do you consider that?
I'm sure that is a chilling factor for people. I mean, I've been a federal employee for most of my career, and you can't get a federal job without being subjected to drug testing. It's not a fun thing to think, oh, next week I'm going to get drug tested.
Yeah, we're trying to get people trained to work, and so sometimes they have to work through that, and sometimes they need to know. But anyway, that's our job. We see if we can change the statute. The other question is, you talked about the complexity of the application process. Is there anything you can do administratively to make it a simpler problem, or is that all statutory that's making it complex?
Most of it is federal requirements. Now, my chief innovation officer over there works with my deputy executive director for economic assistance, Shanetta Drone, and they are every day trying to find ways to make it less burdensome for families to apply for all of the services we offer.
Well, the application process in Mississippi is a whole lot more complex than it is in other states. That's why my question is, if you have recommendations, I think some of those complexities are brought about state by state statute, not federal statute. And so what I'm asking, would you be willing to make recommendations to the legislature, just like you did in 21 to get it to raise the monthly allowance, to talk to them about what would make the process less burdensome?
I'm certainly willing to discuss recommendations with you. Yes, sir.
I'm with you. I want to change it. I need you to have these recommendation discussions with your Republican friends. That's what I need. Are you willing to do that?
I am willing to discuss anything that will simplify the application process.
Thank you. The other question, my final question, is in terms of you said to us in 22, you talked about that you had asked the legislature to raise the monthly allowance, and you agreed with us in 22 when you were here that you thought it ought to be raised again. Have you had the opportunity to come over and make that recommendation to the legislature in the last 2 years?
I don't think we've asked in the last 2 years. We have a request pending to bring it over this year.
You're asking the governor to allow you to bring over an increase.
Yes.
Were you prohibited from doing that before? This is not an indictment on you because you agreed with us. My question is, we need to know what you need from us to get you over here to make that recommendation.
I was not prohibited over the last couple of years, no.
Okay. No. All right. Thank you.
Senator Blunt.
Thank you. My first question was what Leader Johnson indicated about the flow chart that a recipient has to go through. If this was MDA and we saw that about somebody having to go to MDA to get incentives, we can clean that up. And we need to identify what those are at the state level. I'd like to get with you, I know there are a lot of questions, I'd like to get with you offline or on your staff on the unused balance that's in the bank and what we can do with it and what our time frame is to do with it. I think that's something that has not come up that we need to discuss. And again, respecting the other members here who have questions, I just want to make one more point here, and that is, to me, the TANF money is the only money in the budget that we can put in the hands of poor people. And the state budget is $31 billion, and this is the only money that can go directly to help poor people have it, not learn to fish, but have a fish. This is it. And so a lot of this is on us. The Division of Child Protection Services does good work, but that should be funded out of the general fund. That should be funded out of the general fund. Many of your sub-grantees do good work. They're good people on that list. The Complete to Complete program, a good program. That should be funded out of the general fund. That the only way to put more than 5% of this money in people's hands, either to pay the rent with or to pay for child care with, this is the only place. And so the only way, if the amount of money is what it is, roughly $86 million, it has to come from the general fund, funding CPS, that's more than a third of it all right there, and funding the successful programs and the sub-grants that you have here out of other funds, because you've restored a lot of accountability, and good for you, but there's a massive bureaucracy and RFPs and a 10-step process and fiscal management and all that bureaucratic crap where you could just send people a check and they could spend it and pay rent and buy food with it. And you could, and that to me is more efficient and really is the ultimate. Again, these are good programs. Most of them, and I appreciate that you've restored some accountability there, but the TANF money I think it needs to, the 5% of the money that's going to poor people needs to be dramatically increased, and this is the only way to do it. And so I think that's something that the legislature, we're responsible for that, but I think you can, by diminishing these barriers and allocating more money, that 5% number's got to go up, and that's what we need your help with. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
respond to that just briefly. Senator, I would remind you that our agency only receives about 5% of our budget from the general fund. We have a $1.4 billion federal budget. We need those general fund dollars allow us to draw down federal dollars. And so we, unless you give us a whole lot more general funds, we're not going to be able to flip the switch and move all this work.
Well, we got to give CPS $29 million in general fund.
He's saying, keep your money. We need to get that money. That's right.
You certainly have the authority to do that.
That's on us.
Yes, sir.
And members, we have questions in this order. We have Representative Hines, Representative Hullum, Faulkner, Summers, Senator Norwood, Representative Taylor, Butler, Dan Porter, but also Director Anderson. Let me just jump in right quick. Can we get the presentation so we provide it to the members?
I can get you that, yes.
All right, thank you. Representative Hines.
Thank you, my Senator Simmons. My colleague used my phrase that I use all the time. There's prosperity and poverty. And I'm certainly serious. Looking at that chart about the amount of money that's going out, there are some very prosperous entities on that chart, but yet and still we have the highest rate of poverty in this state. And so I'm looking for some clarity. You touted like refill, used to be Refill Jackson. I don't know what it is right now.
Refill Initiative.
Okay. What is their outcomes of people not just finding jobs, but maintaining jobs? Because historically, they've always been able to help people be employed, but not gainfully employed. I mean, they don't last or maintain those jobs. So do you have any data, or are you tracking those people from any of those entities that are being trained for jobs if they're keeping those jobs? Because I'm real familiar with this because I've worked with some of those people who've been through those programs in other entities. That's why I know this information. So are y'all tracking the data on the people who are being trained, and if they're hired, are they able to maintain the job longer than 6 weeks or 6 months?
I can't tell you for certain that we are tracking every one of them because they leave our TANF program, sir, once they are employed. We all know the benefit cliffs issue that every recipient faces. As soon as they lose their benefits, even if they've got a job, they may lose household income because they're employed and lose all of the supportive assistance they were receiving. I will check with these sub-grant. We request outcome data from all of them.
Okay. So how many people who have been through some of those programs have ended back up on the TANF list? Do you know that data?
I don't know the answer, but remember too that TANF is a lifetime benefit. Is only 60 months. Once you exhaust your 60 months, that's all you're going to receive in your lifetime.
Okay. I prepared probably about 20 questions for you, but I'm not going to do you like that. When you come, I understand that your position is an appointed position by the governor. And you have to present to us most of the time what his leadership staff has basically given you. Do you, as a former recipient of these services, feel as though the benefit amount that has only doubled in 30 years is sufficient enough to feed or take care of a family when the cost of gas 30 years ago was 86 cents and now it's $2.86? How do you feel about that personally?
Representative Hines, it's beyond debate that if you raise the amount to $320 for a family of three, that's still less than $4,000 a year. No family can feed itself, can provide housing for itself on $4,000 a year. You're asking my opinion. The reality is no. That amount would not allow, it would bring them closer. But, a lot of our TANF families also have SNAP benefits. Some of them receive LIHEAP assistance. Some of them receive community block grant assistance. So TANF is a piece of the pie. It's not everything. If you're talking about TANF alone, you could double, quadruple the monthly amount, and it still would not be enough TANF on its own to sustain a family.
All right, two more questions, I'm through. What is the amount of administrative costs these agencies get to receive for managing these grants? Is it 5%, 7%, 13%? How much of those agencies get to maintain for administrative costs?
Federal law sets I believe it's a 10% cap on their administrative costs.
So if an agency has 5 sub-grants with you, they basically are getting 50% of their net costs for running those grants. Am I understanding it correct? So you're saying 10% for, let's just say, a work program, they receive 10% administrative costs, but they got 5 different sub-grants from your, I'm just asking, is 10% for each sub-grant, is that correct?
When we look at their budget narrative, sir, we look at what their other sources of income are. We don't allow them to draw 10%, 10%, 10%, 10% from multiple grants.
Okay, and that's good to hear. I just wanted to make sure. And my final question is, overall, with what has taken place in this particular body of government, what have you done long-term to ensure that once you're gone, the next person cannot come in and alter the programming to where the fraud and the mishandling of government funds will take place again?
I described for you some of the processes we have put in place. Every new administration, sir, has the opportunity to do just what I did, and that's change all the existing administrative rules in the agency. I can't guarantee. I've put in place what I think are good rules, and if people who come behind me will leave those rules in place, then no executive director can exert the kind of influence that my predecessor did. But they have to leave those rules in place. I mean, we know every time there's a new administration, every time there's a new executive director, there's the opportunity to reprioritize and to repeal, so to speak, any of the existing rules.
Well, thank you for coming, and I'll be in touch.
Representative Falk.
Real quick, first I want to say I thank you. I applaud you, for being not just available, but accessible and being transparent as possible. I just got 3 quick questions. The first question is, do you know, or your organization know, how much money is getting put into the wedlock and also the parenthood initiative compared to the single family initiative?
Well, those are the numbers right there.
So how much
initiatives are there, and the after-school programs are on the list?
No. What I'm asking is this: how much money goes to a single family compared to? I don't know which of them organizations, which one of them is doing wedlock and parent initiative compared to which one is just doing for a single mother with a family of 3, a family of 2. So how's that money broken down?
I'm not sure I'm following your question. There's no money that goes to TANF recipients who participate in this program.
Okay, so I'll make it simpler. The budget for a person receiving TANF assistance, all right, a family, compared to the budget that's for parenthood, maintaining a dual family household, and making sure a child, well, not a child, but a person is not getting pregnant out of wedlock. That's a program, right?
Those are goals of the TANF program, sir, but we don't have separate programs. We have sub-grantees, and then we award cash benefits. We don't award cash benefits for the Parenthood Initiative, if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking that.
I'm not following your question.
All right. Because this question, I got asked this question before I came up here from the coast. So, how much money do y'all give to keep a family together?
Give as much as they qualify.
So there's no set budget, right?
No, there's no set budget.
No set budget, okay. Compared to, out of the 2,600 people, how much money is set aside for the 2,600 people with only a certain amount being approved for y'all TANF?
We spent $4.5 million in fiscal year '23
Okay.
family assistance.
Family assistance, okay, and how much was spent on the wedlock program?
I don't know. I'd have to add all of these sub-grants up.
Okay, so that's the number I'm looking for right there.
Okay, I can get that back to
Okay.
you, but I can't do the
And
math in my
I got
head
you.
right now.
I got you. And last but definitely not least, when it comes to these legacy organizations, do your organization tracks by who is a minority, who's not a minority? When it comes to these legacy organizations like the Visions, the Vision of Calvary Ministry, and these other different organizations, how many of them are minority organizations compared to Caucasian organizations? Or y'all don't do nothing like that?
We track if they are minority or women owned, I believe. I don't know if we have all those numbers.
Is there any way we can get that? Because that says a lot.
Our Economic Assistance and Workforce Development Division and see if that number is available.
Okay. And I got a question from a person that's very well known. And they want to know who determines the amount of money that's distributed through the overall TANF budget. It seemed like the program devoted cash assistance to families who spend the money for the budget, but the budget is like a balloon budget because all the money ain't being spent.
I can't go in the street, sir, and throw money on the street and tell people, if you qualify, here's your money. I can only distribute money to those who apply and who are determined to be eligible for the money. We would spend a lot more on basic cash assistance if we had more applicants and we approved more applicants. But we don't have very many and we don't approve very many. That's a reality.
That applicant process, is it mandated by the state or the federal government?
Both. We have state law requirements and we have federal law requirements.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Director, for coming. You mentioned about your drug testing, and that if they came back with a positive test, you offered programs. How long is that program for? The ones who come back positive, how long will it take them to complete that process?
I think a general drug rehab program runs anywhere from 6 weeks to 12 weeks. I haven't looked at the timeline for a drug rehab program. It could be as short as 3 to 4 weeks, but it's going to be at least a month. I mean, you have to detox the person, and then they have to have treatment.
Okay. Just curious, so if a person came and applied for the benefits and they went through the normal process and they were approved, how long would that take?
On average, I couldn't tell you. Maybe 30 days.
30 to 45 days.
30 days, 40 days on average.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Director, for the things you implemented as it relates to the spending oversight. That's really good. We're glad to hear about that. I too had concerns about the $30 million going to CPS, even though you touted about that program. It was testified to us earlier that $260 would be a good addition to make an increase. And I'm just thinking if the legislature would fund CPS and freed up some of that money, we could have more of a $60 increase in benefits. And the last question is, we have about 25 sub-grantees, is that correct?
That sounds about right.
25. And you said to us that if we know of any nonprofits, have them to take a look at the website. Is there a cap on how many sub-grantees or what?
No, sir. There's no cap. There's no cap on the number. There's no cap on the amount. All that's required is that they submit a good proposal, they have a good budget narrative that supports what they're going to do, and that they pass that risk assessment and the site visit if they score 75 points or more on their proposal.
Okay, well, my final question. So is there an allotment to set aside for sub-grantees? And so in the
ad hoc decision we make every year.
So it's not like if they don't use it, what happens to that? There's just an amount.
Well, as I said, when a subgrantee goes through a year and they don't spend their money, we generally are asking them after 50% of the time has expired and they haven't spent 50% of the money to explain themselves. If they can't explain themselves, then we're not going to renew a subgrant to somebody who's not doing the work.
Understand.
That money will go back into the TANF program.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Summers, then Senator Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for being here. In regards to the drug testing, you testified that there are 59 people that were tested and 6 people tested positive. How do you identify the people that need to be drug tested?
There is an instrument, a test instrument called SASSI. Don't ask me what SASSI stands for. It's SASSI. It is an existing instrument that's used. I think our Youth Services Division uses it for juveniles as well. In that assessment, it's a psychological assessment, so to speak. In that assessment, drug use or tendencies are identified through that SASSI instrument. And if somebody, if their assessment indicates they may be a drug-dependent person, then we send them for testing just to find out whether they are.
So every individual that applies for TANF goes through this SASSI instrument to determine whether or not they need to be drug tested?
Yes, ma'am. That's my understanding. That's the way the process works. That's one of those many, many steps in this workflow I showed you.
Okay. And you said 59 people were identified out of the thousands of people that apply for TANF and only 6 tested positive. So the metrics really don't show that the drug testing is really necessary or even effective.
Well, I will leave that to this body to decide whether it's necessary because it's in the law.
Gotcha.
It's certainly a matter open for debate.
Sure. Thank you. You also testified that the agency is going to be asking for a $60 increase for cash assistance, but you also talked about how that is unreasonable. How did you get to the $60 increase, and why aren't you asking for more?
I don't know how to say this. I remind myself, just as I remind the people who depend on me as their executive director, the governor appointed me. The governor can disappoint me by telling me to go home. So I have to operate within a certain framework, and that's what I'm doing.
So are you saying that if you ask for more, he might unappoint you for the position? Yikes. Okay.
Always that possibility every day.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean,
it happens, but it could happen.
Right. I mean, he has the prerogative to say yay or nay, and the legislature can determine whether or not 60 is right, or if more needs to be added.
This legislature has the authority to pick the $250 a month number that was mentioned earlier.
Right.
Increase it from $260 to $500 a month,
right.
$110 a month, according to the number that was suggested. So.
How much in unspent TANF funds do you have now?
Unspent is a hard question to answer. We have unobligated presently and unliquidated, and some of those that are unliquidated are already obligated for something. So we have about 160 million that's either unliquidated or unobligated. But I cannot tell you that it's unspent, because a good bit of it will be spent. We will spend, we have plans to spend, based on what I've shown you, about $80 to $82 million a year.
Can you tell us what those plans are again? How do you intend on obligating the
grants, child care? We're going to convert another $25 million to child care development fund next year, because we've seen our enrollment in the child care program go from 25,000 last May to 35,000 today. when we eliminated the child support cooperation requirement for child care applicants. And we unless this legislature funds us to the tune of about 40 million additional general fund dollars, we're going to run into a waiting list in our child care program. So we're going to continue. We can only convert up to 17.5% of our TANF grant to child care funds. And that comes out to about $27.5 million. And we're
How much did you say?
about 27.5 million.
27.5.
It's in a whole year. We can't do it all at once because we don't get the grant except in quarterly tranches. We get a quarterly allotment every quarter from DC. We don't get it all at one time.
So right now, you don't have any children on the waiting list?
We do not right now, but our director tells me that come January the 1st, unless we get some additional fund, we used as much ARPA money as we could to get us through the end of September. We had a $20 million additional allotment of discretionary funds that will carry us through the end of the year, but our program will hit the wall come January without a huge increase in funding. And we will have a waiting list in January.
Okay. I remember maybe about a year or so ago, you testified to a different committee about, once the COVID emergency was lifted, some 12,000 kids were going to lose child care assistance. Have you experienced that number of children losing that assistance, or you said that there were no children on the waiting list, so in other words, all children who need it have it?
Steady enrollment up to now, up to today, we've been able to accommodate it by converting TANF funds to child care funds.
Okay. I know that you talked about your personal story growing up under with 5 other brothers and sisters and your mom and all, and you mentioned how of a great job that your colleagues, your staff are doing. I'm just wondering, do you have anybody that is, has lived experience right now with the TANF program? Are you engaging with those individuals to improve your system?
We have people in probably dozens of our county offices who have lived experience, who are working with us as eligibility workers right now, benefit resource specialists, whatever MSPB renamed their job, but they're eligibility workers. Yes, we are engaging with them. We also have
Are they recipients, or they're just working within the system?
They are employed with the agency. Now, we have tried to put together an advisory committee with current recipients. I'll be honest with you, we haven't had a lot of response to folks wanting to be on an advisory committee, but we're still looking at it. That's one of the ideas that Ms. Graves and I have talked about. We have a field office advisory committee that is looking at ways to reach out to the communities we serve. I'm still interested. I just haven't been able to enlist anybody yet.
Well, I think we got a number of organizations that can help you identify folks for your advisory committee. On one of your slides, there was a number 5. You had a list of 10. The number 5 was in regards to if there are any findings of subgrantees where they have not met particular outcomes. Are those reports also publicly available of organizations that, from your findings after they've been audited, you found that they misspent funds or did not meet outcomes? Is that also on your website?
I'm not certain about that. I'll have to ask our monitoring division. I cannot recall whether we post those on the website.
Okay.
Let me talk to my chief compliance officer and ask. My sense is they probably are not, because some of that is proprietary business information about those agencies that they may not want out there on the website, and I don't think we are posting it right now.
Well, if they're receiving public funds and they're misusing those public funds, the public should know about that.
I mean, if we determine that there's fraud, that is published, absolutely.
Okay.
But, a record-keeping mistake that they can clear with documentation, and a lot of them are cleared through adequate documentation. Don't think we want to embarrass a partner by putting that out on the website when they clear it through a hearing process. But if we determine that it's not, substantiated, that they can't support the expense, or that it was fraudulently misspent, we definitely will make that a matter of public record.
Okay.
In addition to that, our friend State Auditor Shad White got a law enacted a couple of years ago requires me to report that kind of information to him.
Well, bless his heart.
My thoughts exactly.
Thank you. I'm a proud board member for Refill Jackson Initiative, so I really appreciate you for lifting them up. We have a lot of these great, they're not listed on here, so if you would like to give some money to Refill through a different grant, you can.
We support them through our workforce development division in a separate, it's not a TANF.
Right.
But yeah, they're a wonderful partner. And like I said, if we could have a couple of hundred more refill initiatives, it would be great.
Yes, okay.
They're
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
And so we have the numbers in this corner, Director Anderson, and then we're going to let you get out of here because we do have numbers. We do have another presenter. We're going to go ahead and try to end the hearing. We have Senator Norwood, Representative Taylor, Representative Butler, Representative Porter, and our final question for Director Anderson would be from Senator Brosky.
Thank you, Director Anderson and Mr. Chairman. In order to raise the cash assistance amount, does that require the legislature to do that? The federal law require that the state legislature?
Federal law doesn't require it, but it's written into our TANF statute. You'd have to amend the statute. That's what we did in 2021. That's what you did in 2021. You would have to amend it to raise the monthly benefit amount, if that's what you're asking, Senator. There would have to be a statutory change.
Has to be a statutory change.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the 20, I think is the $29 million that's going to Child Protective Services. Is that the best utilization of these dollars? Isn't that doing a disservice to the TANF recipients to award that money to that dollar amount to Child Protective Services?
Well,
for individuals that may not, because obviously there are challenges to serve the TANF population, and that amount going, and I'm not, I support Child Protective Services, but not at the expense of TANF recipients.
Well, goal number one of TANF is providing assistance to needy families so they can stay in their own homes. My hope is that what they're doing with that TANF money we share with CPS is that they're making use of it so that those families can stay in their homes.
Now, are they doing that themselves? Or are they sub-granting those dollars?
Well, they've changed what they're using the money for the next grant period. They were using the funds, I think, primarily to fund staff last year and the year before and the year before. But now the majority of their sub-grant is going to be devoted to home assessments by Canopy, which has the potential for keeping children in their homes. It also has the potential for taking children out of their homes.
Well, be that as may, when you look at the funding cycle, it starts here and come all the way around. So Canopy getting some money. Canopy is getting $4 million. Child Protective Services is getting $29 million. And when you look at that, it's too much, I guess, collusion, if you will, there. And the same thing in terms of when you look at, the Three Rivers Planning Development District. They're getting money. They're giving money to the community colleges. The community colleges are getting money. How do we know that these individuals are not getting different monies to do the same thing?
Well, because when we award a sub-grant, one of the first things we ask is, where else are you getting money from? And we, in the selection process, make sure we're not duplicating funding with something they're already receiving funding for. So the canopy money up here is a TANF Parenthood Initiative program they do. The money that's going to come out of the CPS sub-grant is a completely different home assessment program that they do that doesn't have anything to do with the Parenthood Initiative.
I mean, I could, you know, I won't belabor that, but we're gonna have a meeting, I guess, later on this month to talk about the same thing in terms of the Three Rivers and the community colleges, because everybody's getting workforce development and training money, and all the money that we give to the community colleges. I think it's a challenge that we're giving money to planning development district, and then they're in turn giving the money to the community colleges. But that's a conversation for another day. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Representative Taylor.
Taylor.
Thank you for allowing me to be recognized. First of all, I want to take a different approach. I know you're probably had a little anxiety coming today and possibly getting, piled on. But I want to
have a whole lot less anxiety than I suggested, but go ahead.
But I do want to commend you that under your tenure, there are less people in the waiting lines, as far as the time to get accepted for TANF. The process is a lot better. But I do have some glaring concerns. When you showed that chart about how difficult it is to get TANF money, two questions popped up. Number one, are these federal guidelines that you're following with all this bureaucracy to get you from point A to B for a family? Is it on the Fed side? Is it on the state side? Can you answer that question?
It's like this, sir. It's a mixture of both.
Okay.
Some of it is federal. Some of it is requirements that, frankly, this body put on the program.
Okay.
That you could take off, but they're part of the program right now.
Now, also, you being the executive director, and I commend you for being here because the last executive director actually, presumably faked a heart attack when he was supposed to return. I don't know if you know that or not.
He also always told you everything's fine. If everything's not fine,
That's
I'm
right.
going to tell you it's not fine.
So thank you.
We need $40 million for child care.
Thank you for showing up and answering these questions. But my challenge is, as executive director, how much latitude do you have on actually curtailing some of this bureaucracy to help families? Because whenever there's leadership involved, leadership has an opportunity, even through appointments, to be able to shape the narrative of their departments, of their organizations. So how much of the onus of how we get to point A to point B for these families, how much latitude do you have?
Good question.
In all honesty, not as much as I would like, but again, I operate within an administration, and I'm a part of that administration. I don't get to make those rules either, just like I don't get to make the law.
And I asked that question very specifically because, it's very easy to kind of defer to the feds, to the state, but you are the captain of this ship. And therefore, some of this onus has to fall on the captain. All of us in this room, most of us are in leadership positions, and at the end of the day, we have to answer those tough questions, but also we have to be resourceful. We have to make sure that we're managing our monies right, that we actually are implementing our own vision and mission. And I just want to challenge, I just want to give a little pushback and a little challenge to say, listen, some of this stuff, I take on the responsibility of changing and not deferring to the feds and to the state. And we're here to help you where we can, especially on the state side, because we want to see our people actually serve. Second question. I have a bill that I've been, every year I implement, and the history goes, almost 8 years ago as a freshman, I called a similar hearing And you know, it's kind of crazy for freshmen to call a hearing. But my background is actually in child care, in after-school services, where my family's received TANF dollars. So organizations will say, hey, listen, there's no money here, something's going on, our people not being served, and all of a sudden, 6 months later, a scandal cropped up. So, well, actually, I have one more question. So has the loophole about how these scandals happen been closed under your administration?
Sir, I believe we have put in place, I'm convinced that we have put in place internal controls that will never allow the scandal that happened under my predecessor to be repeated. If those internal controls stay in place.
Oh, now, again, who put those controls in?
We didn't even have a compliance officer when I arrived, sir. My first hire was a chief compliance officer, and we got busy building a compliance program because this agency needs one. I think every agency that administers tax dollars needs a compliance program, but we absolutely needed one, and we have put a crackerjack compliance program together in this agency.
And for that reason, I appreciate your leadership. But we also have to make sure that that leadership, that type of control, expands into some of this bureaucracy to give families the monies that they need. So thank you for that. Also, too, the bill that I was talking about, the bill says that the governor, when there's an opportunity to send money back to the feds, like we've done, and in fact, can somebody give me that number? How much money do we send back to the feds from the TANF program?
We don't send any money back.
Well, Mississippi Department of Human Services, let me put it that way.
We don't send any TANF money back, sir.
No TANF money back, but if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around $20 million, $30 million went back last year to the federal government, saying that the state of Mississippi didn't need it. Am I correct in saying that?
It wasn't your department.
I don't think my agency sent any money back. If they did, I want to know about it.
Okay. Well, I could
give us the money and the feds give us the money to spend it to help poor Mississippi natives, and that's what we do with it.
Well, we do know that there are monies that actually go back every year, tens of millions of dollars returned back to the feds. And the bill simply states that before the governor can send back money to the feds, especially in this area, that the money is reappropriated to nonprofits, to community development agencies, and so on and so forth, because the state of Mississippi can't figure out how to spend the money. Surely our partners can. Would you be in support of, if you find that that is the case, would you be supportive of making sure that our governor is fully aware that there are other agencies who can handle that money and keep that money here in the state of Mississippi?
This is going to sound like a cop-out, but I'm just going to have to say, sir, that's above my pay grade. What the governor does within his discretion, it's not something I have any control over.
Let me rephrase. That may have been a bit unfair. That may be a bit unfair. Would you be in favor of us, of actually taking the recommendations from this meeting here today back to our governor in support of these things that you agreed to today?
Certainly. If you want to take them to the governor, certainly.
I'd like to suggest that we develop a document, a one-pager, of the suggestions made here today so we can actually make sure that that reaches the desk of our governor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. I have a question. Well, I had two, but he did one. In regards to the sub-grantees that the agency has, upon the site visits that you all do, if there are any findings that are out of their scope of work that the agency has given them, because I'm sure with the basis of the grant, the community organization does not give you the scope of work. As a part of the RFP, the agency gives that particular, in the RFP, the scope of work. So once the site visit is conducted, based on the scope of work that particular organization has, if there is a finding that is within that scope of work that is not how it should be, do you all give a corrective action plan that needs to be completed, like for example, within the next 30 days, and then you go back
with another site visit within the 30 days of that corrective action plan? Or what does that look like? Because having that corrective action plan or with those findings that you find within the scope of work, I'm just trying to see in regards to how that fits into the process of being able to make sure that that particular entity or organization is completing those tasks.
Well, first of all, let me point out, the sub-grant agreements that we negotiate with our sub-grantee partners, it does have a scope of work within there. And the budget narrative has to support the scope of work that they're proposing to carry out. Now, with regard to a corrective action plan, there are two parties that interact with our sub-grantees. There's the funding division, which is the Workforce Development and Partnership Management. They do regular technical assistance visits if they see that the sub-grantee is not being able to conduct their work properly, or they don't know how to conduct the work, or they don't have they're just not they're not performing the scope of work. That's different from the monitoring division that comes along after 50% of the money has been expended. And if they find money was improperly utilized, they simply make a finding of question cost.
Okay.
They send an initial findings letter to that sub-grantee who has an opportunity to submit documentation to clear those question costs. If they don't, then they get a final decision letter from the monitoring division, and they can either pay the money back or they can request an administrative hearing to try to explain why this money was not improperly spent.
Okay, so you all do quarterly or annually site visits for your sub-grantees?
I think we do visits as often as a sub-grantee requests technical assistance. We don't have a cycle of once a quarter or twice a year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Director, thank you for being here and always being willing to address this body. Really quick, you noted that you guys don't have TANF experts, and you wish you could get TANF experts. So, fact is that we do have advocates that have been studying and doing this for decades. Would you be amenable to working with them to solve the issues that you do have with TANF?
I'm willing to work with anybody, sir. If they have the expertise that we don't have, we're open to working with them.
All right. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for doing a yeoman's job of bringing us together. Mr. Director, I want to thank you for the information you shared. I'm interested, in particular, to the organizations, nonprofit organizations, as RFPs, and who do you have that can give training to those who are not knowledgeable of how to receive those sub-grants? Is there something or some type of training that we can do or come together and do it?
Absolutely. We're planning to offer that again. We offered that about 2 years ago, I believe. We actually recorded it and posted it on our website. I taught that training about what a good proposal looks like, what you need to do to write a good proposal. I may offer the training, I may lead the training again when we offer it again, but we're planning to offer that training again probably after the first of the year. Mark, do you know, is that still on our website anywhere? Okay. The recorded version of that from a couple of years ago, we may be able to get to somebody, but we're going to offer it in person again.
Would you share that with me?
Absolutely.
That recorded version, and who can I speak with if I have some
I would say
nonprofit organizations
go
interested?
directly to our website and say, sign up to receive information about subgrants.
Wonderful.
Go to that box that says, I need help with, just type in subgrant information.
Thank you.
It should take you to the page.
Director Anderson, thank you so much for coming
Yes, sir.
in. Thank you for your leadership today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We want to announce that our final speaker is going to submit her findings on paper. She has experienced how long it takes the legislature to ask a question. And so we want to thank Kyra Roby from One Voice for being here. We really appreciate her. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, motion, rise and report. Thank you.
Great job.